Hello，还没睡吗？Hello，对啊，我开播，我也不知道什么时候开始，我刚投票回来，然后看来是55分钟后开始这个会更新，然后陆陆续续的那个票就慢慢进来了，准备启动疯牛或者疯熊。我应该加一个 Trump 的 emoji，我去找一下，我看怎么弄。我看我现在加。 这个他们背景都不是透明的，我不知道是我的什么问题，我还找不到一个合适的。我老婆去研究看看，看可不可以做一个。我们现在有 Elon 的嘛，就 Elon。Trump 的小 emoji 嘛 ，sticker。对啊，我一直开着，只是我不一定会一直坐在这里。我待会看嘛，我应该就坐在这边嘛。我待会可能吃个饭什么的，就会开着。我们这边快出了嘛，44分钟开始，我们一起来看。我记得2020的时候我也在看，那时候狗狗币起飞的时候，看这个可不可以？它背景都没有透明，这也是白的。我老婆去研究一下，那表情包都是她做的。按你来说，这应该都是要透明的，什么都没有。不知道谁一面大？现在好像 Trump 又开始拉开了，就是那个 betting market、poly market。本来是 Trump 遥遥领先，后来前2天接近了，现在又开始拉开了。你看，现在又开始背离了，这里，他们拉近了几天，然后现在又开始分开了，所以我觉得应该是 Trump 会赢嘛。我刚去投票，应该给 Trump 投了一票。我刚好在 Nevada 是那个 swing state 嘛，所以我的票应该蛮重要的。你点进图片再存 ，OK， 我试试看，看有没有好一点的。这个还不错其实直接盗人家的图。我把这个头像弄出来以后，有可能需要重启直播。看，刚才我们那个还不错的。Trump 编辑 Spirit 点进去再存上。哦，他们是这样一包的，可能故意的，他要卖给你。这都是同一个这个，所以他都没有不让我下，因为他是在出售的这些。这也是都是同一个网站。这个还不错看下这个。这好多个。我感觉这个比较经典，我每次那个视频的那个 clickbait 都用这个。怎么样？大家喜欢哪一个？ 这个，我看这样可不可以？不行的话，我就用它的这个按钮。这是 JPG， 这还有什么版权吗？这不是 Trump 的头，还有什么 DMCA 什么版权问题？这个最烦了。我觉得这个最讨厌是，他也不跟你说你对了没，他就一直叫你弄。那到底是你点错了还是点对了？你看他都没有说对了再一次，对了再一次，或者错了。这也不是 bicycle， 这是 motorcycle。那该不该点这个 motorcycle？ 这个可以。像这个把手，我玩这种的时候我都不知道这算不算。然后像这里也有一个 crosswalk， 这个不知道算不算。bus， 这个真的还看不出来，这应该不是。好，终于可以下载。下一个，要下载到病毒啊，这个好像可以，试试看。Trump， 哎，有了，我试试看看可不可以。希望不用重启直播，我重刷新一下我这个聊天室，看有没有。有，这好像看不出来，太小。我再去找一下，看有没有头比较大的。就直接一个大头贴这样子。这些都是带一些身体。啊，这只有一个头的。开直播，我老婆来了。你看，我找到一个，其实这个不够大。
这个，
你做好了？
这个可以。
你发给我 Telegram。
发不了。
Telegram。
然后就宕机了。我告诉你在哪里找。
我在这里找。
这个。
现在情况还没开始算票，只是看起来是 Trump 赢面比较大。从那个资本市场看的话，是 Trump 的赢面大。等一下啊，我死了。等一下，我弄一下这个游戏。好卡。挖矿，我最近在研究挖矿的。我买了一台矿机，应该这个礼拜会到。真正的挖矿，不是这个游戏挖矿。现在情况还没开始算，只是就是那个 betting market 显示 Trump 又开始赢面比较大了。我先找一个头像，我待会再给你看。最近都没有，现在搞一个 election 直播回归正轨一下。刚才这个太大了，这个4000乘以4000，它的档案最多只能1 MB， 所以我就要把它压缩一下。怎么压缩 ？Edit Paint 3D。Edit a photo。怎么压缩？没有正常的 Paint， 我以前都是用 Paint。OK， 这 Paint 这个存出来是不是就不是 PNG 了？狗狗币，对啊，狗狗币最近表现不错。我最近研究那个挖矿，最近我不知道持续了多久，挖狗狗币是最赚钱的，所以就是莱特币嘛，挖莱特币的矿机是最赚钱的，因为狗狗币价钱很高，所以挖莱特币等于挖狗狗币，现在是最赚的。所以现在的趋势就是很多矿工莱特币算力越来越高嘛，然后很多矿工都一直慢慢的把他们的那个矿机都换成莱特币的矿机了，所以以后莱特币算力会越来越强，因为他们那些电的成本都是一样，你不管挖比特币还是莱特币都一样，只是你现在挖莱特币拿狗狗币赚了很多，所以现在矿工都开始慢慢转型挖狗狗币。叫什么啊？我这研究了两三天矿机，我大概知道什么情况。你看，最赚的是 Ant Miner L9， 这是挖莱特币的，莱特币狗狗币。第二赚的是 Volk Miner， 27块每天。你看前几名全部都是挖莱特币，然后还有一个最近有个什么 Elf 币，我不知道这是什么东西。然后 Ethereum Classic Elf 币，然后你看这全部都是莱特币，最赚钱的。然后反而到这边才有比特币的，比特币在这里。看下这台矿机多少钱？这台矿机要2万块，莱特币的 L9 的话就6000块有，买期货的话6000块，一月的货6000块有一台。那你看6000块，然后它一天可以赚28块美金，这个矿机。不过它这个电我家里还没拉，所以我先买一台小矿机，小功率一点的来玩玩看，先熟悉一下操作。到时候牛市起飞的矿机价钱会起飞，所以我到时候等熊底的时候去炒矿机，开个矿场。我放在我的车库里就好。冬天放车库应该 OK， 只是那个夏天可能放不了，因为太热。车库里矿机都不用开，已经100度了。还有那个电路啦，我需要拉一些电路。然后那个电费，然后这里需要改一下，我是大概0.12， 所以我赚的没那么多，到时候买这矿机赚的没那么多，没有刚才那么多。只是我这边商用电可以0.07，所以到时候我可以用商用的，我去租一个办公室什么，然后接商用电，可以到0.07，甚至比这个更低都有。只是0.07大概是平均，就美国这边商用电大概是0.07，只是家里就是0.12，我这里是大概0.12左右，所以我不知道有没有，其实有时候它是0.12，只是会比如说高峰期啊、暑假啊，它会有不同的 rate， 所以到时候要去研究那些很细的条款，不要在那种电费特别高的时候开矿机就好了，就还是可以赚。所以我先买了一个 L3， 用二手的 L3 是亏钱的，只是我主要先熟悉这个操作。就目前的这个币价和电费价 ，L3 是亏钱，这个老机子。我的$100多美金买了一台，主要是来测试一下。我看下 L3 应该是亏大概1块钱，每天亏1块钱。L3， 要买了 L3， 对，每天亏大概1块多。我只是来熟悉一下操作，然后到时候接那个，到时候直接买大的矿机，直接买这种3000瓦以上的。我就去找头像，这太大了。这也很大，10MB， 我需要1MB 内，13MB， 8MB， 这些都很大。这个可以0.85，试试看这个，这也很清楚，就一个大头像，跟像我这个猫一样，就是一个头。试试看。我们直播到开票出结果，不出结果不睡觉。测试一下这个。不行，这要1:1，这不是1:1的 ratio， 真麻烦。1:1那个我应该可以自己改吧？这个不能改，我这里没有那个编辑图片的。看这个可不可以 ？ratio 720啊，720，就这样，试试看。这个是 copy。试试看，可以，来测试。他的脸有点模糊，看得清楚吗？他的脸不够显著，不像伊朗的，那伊朗一看就知道是伊朗。还是这个好像也还可以，可以吧？就这样吧，太麻烦了。 还有25分钟。对，25分钟。现在才中午，我一般这时候还没睡醒。我今天起得特别早，早上有事情，早上去车子去维护了，然后去投了个票，然后还有另外一件事情，然后现在中午，所以今天起得比较早。一般我这时候还在睡觉，我都早上睡，下午醒。你觉得我们也需要一个 Kamala 的头像吗？还是就不用了？到底是 Kamala Harris 还是 Kamala Harris？ Kamala Harris。没有空间给他了。我们其他的头像需要在3个会员会开通11个头像。我看11个贴图，我现在有几个？1、2、3、4、9、10、11、12、13，不行，因为我刚才不小心差一点删掉一个头像，因为你看它这个是它需要。我现在只能有11个贴图，其实我已经超过了。我这边有1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9、10、11、12、13、14、15、16，我有16、17、18，我有18个。因为那时候牛顶的时候，很多那个会员嘛，所以我这18个是那时候很多会员的时候他们开通的。我现在如果删掉一个，他就不会再给我加回来，就不能再加回来了。所以我现在不能删，我只能改。除非我们突破新高，那就等这个突破新高，再加新的贴图。现在没有空间给 Kamala， 我们这些都很重要。小韭菜，这个火箭 ，Fluffy， 这个空军 ，Doge，Moon， 又是一个 Doge，Elon Trump， 比特币。这些都是我们之前那个直播间的梗，要打鸡血，这些都不行，不行，去掉了。前几天出了一个这个新的矿机，就是我看了一下，它用电用的比较多，3900瓦。只是 L9 现在赚的也比较多了，然后它用电比较少，好像是比较少一点，3500瓦。然后这个还便宜一些，买期货的话6000块，1月的货6000块。只是它这个还有一个问题，就是它从大陆寄过来的，所以还有关税的问题，所以他们现货都比较贵。如果买现货的话，因为现货如果已经在美国的，它的那个关税已经打进去了，就比较贵一点。所以会看到有不同价钱。你看这现货的话，大概19000到12000都有，9000多12000，看跟谁买。然后这些6000都是期货的。No warranty。他要币起飞，直接用币买。快开始了。 我去发一下，看还有谁没睡。这个叫看开票的，开票。比特币币本位看起来很惨啊，看起来死了，比特币涨不动了。其实没关系，比特币我觉得重点是比特币还没有一个真正的突破性，它就在那边一直摩擦。狗狗币先跑，因为有热度，它那个 Department of Government Efficiency 来了。这莱特币和大部分山寨好像都是一样，是不是都是这样走？这以太跟我画的是虚线差的有点远。我本来这里觉得这里差不多反弹了，没有，他要去探更低。我觉得是被比特币拖着的，比特币这边摩擦，没有一个决心去破一个真正的新高。可能今天是那个叫什么风水岭，是不是？就是今天结果出来了，我觉得不管是谁当选，应该都至少市场就有一些信心了。当然希望 Trump 当选，他比较支持 crypto 嘛，有一些信心就那个市场最不喜欢 uncertainty 嘛，现在就是很多不确定性。这是投票谁会当选，会不会有人冲进那个 Capitol 或者怎么样抗议，或者什么大事情出现，没人知道，所以就资金都在抽离场，会怕。那出结果以后，不管是什么结果，都会至少知道未来是要做什么东西，是要干嘛了。然后希望是比特币可以真正去破一个新高，然后山寨币就跟着拉。对，莱特币，我看莱特币啊，其实它就是回到这里，我觉得破75就有机会了。就是不是那种插一个针上来，比如说插到76又回来，这样就是叫真正的突破74。比如说收个周线在80，对，你说85差不多。你如果真突破，它一般不会说什么收一个周线在76，然后回踩，有可能会，只是真突破要，像这也是这稍微弄一个，然后回踩，然后就出发了嘛。就莱特币来回割韭菜割得太猛了，来来回回的。就一直都这样子，只是这应该是最后的阶段，就是最后把人家无聊死的那个阶段。然后无聊死的阶段刚好比特币在涨，所以它就会显得币本位一直跌，这也是符合逻辑的。你看，如果这个情况，你看莱特币这边基本上横盘，16年到17年，整整1年的没有动。横盘，那如果这一年比特币就是慢慢的一直涨，它这里的币本位就是一直跌，就看起来会一直跌，然后突然一波上去就会赶进度，所以现在就是这一波还没来，这一波上去还没来，这一波上去以后就是要看赶多少进度，然后会不会像我预测的，我觉得几十倍、100倍这种进度赶上去，蹦上去，然后警报都挂好了，这个警报响以后我们就出发，再也回不来这个价位了。碰到这里就再也回不来这里了，所以要从这里，我觉得从这里开始才会真正有比较大热度来。对啊，莱特币就是一直没动。莱特币我买了一些高位一些，买了一些100的，买了一些40的，然后6、7、80中间就一路都在买，反正就是这一圈里面。然后这跌下来之前好像也币本位也买了一些，在这个扑下来之前。我看币本位 看一下，币本位就看起来就很亏了，因为它没有跟上。目前币本位我在这里买了很多，这里买了很多，基本上就是这条线，而且就被砸下来。这看起来的话，法币上是没有亏，只是币本位它亏了60%。所以这个如果不给一个大反弹的话，这个风险蛮大的。币本位突破这个点，我觉得就是哪怕是一根针插上来，碰到这个点，我觉得就是确认出发了。所以币本位需要加油。它看起来有点想要回来填这个针，这个针就不要来填了，这个太夸张了，这一根。每个地方都有一个这个，哇，这直接插到0了，是不是？就只能看了这个，看怎么演出。反而 Zcash 最近还不错，我没有预料到 Zcash 不错。我之前有加了一些仓位 Zcash， 我是想说 Zcash 先冲了以后，可以把仓位再补回 Litecoin 一些。所以它现在是在冲，只是我之前想要做这个动作做得太早，它这整个周期比我想象的慢太多了。只有仓位还是拿着，所以如果它冲的话，到时候可以出一些回到莱特币，再加仓莱特币。因为我还是看好莱特币。只是 Zcash 的这个图看起来也是，就是这里看起来就是底了嘛。Doge， 你看一下 Doge 看起来要先冲的。它是比特币如果破新高，这里也会破新高的，我觉得。13分钟，你们有人在挖矿的吗？有人买矿机在家里，还是现在有在挖的吗？台湾电费多少？台湾是用台币算的，台湾 price of electricity in Taipei is 4块 per kilowatt hour for larger business， 这是 business 的。4块是多少？0.13，哇，那台湾蛮贵的耶。大商用的是0.13，美国家用我这边是如果不是那种高峰期的话是0.12，所以美国的家用比台湾的大商用的还要便宜，是这个意思吗？那 residential 呢？residential 是，台湾是反过来，台湾家用比商用便宜，美国是商用比家用便宜，2.77。0.08，那台湾还可以啊。台湾如果家用是这个 rate 的话，台湾挖矿好像还比美国挖矿划算。我记得台湾电费没有很贵，我这边美国，我暑假电费空调开的话，一个月可以到500-600块美金。现在如果看那个资本市场的话，就是下注谁赢的话，目前 Trump 的赢面是61%。他本来拉近了一点，前2天拉近了一点，然后现在又拉开了，这是他的 K 线。资本，我相信资本不会骗人的，就这个钱，人家下注的钱应该是蛮准确的，只是赌注而已，就是钱，这个赔率不会骗太多人的，我觉得。目前看这个，然后这边还没开始开票，10分开始开票。他们现在有一些图，那些我不知道那是代表什么。 就是他们现在有一些地图，有一些颜色，只是还没有开始开票。他们那些色是什么预测吗？还是我不太懂。反正我们就等这个开票，我看很多地方都是在等这个。10分钟后，我们就可以开始看到这里会开始真正的开票，这可能是 official 的吧？是不是？在喝白香绿珍珠奶茶、珍珠茶。反正我们就等这个好了，10分钟、9分钟，大家耐心一点。应该要开到晚上，因为投票可以一直投到晚上7点，所以现在出来的我不太确定美国的这个选举机制是怎么样。只是我刚才去投票中心投票了嘛，他们可以一直投到晚上7点都可以投，所以7点后估计都还要再算那些东西。只是待会可能会出来那个现场报道的那个数据吧。熔断是什么意思？熔断是涨还是跌？跌吗？应该是美金反弹了一下，有没有？美金，反正这些短线的，反正今天应该会插针嘛，就跟 FOMC 一样，估计上下插一针，然后再重新开始真正的趋势。一般有这种什么大的消息要出来，然后大家都在期待的这种，都会有这种就来回洗杠杆的现象，上下洗一波，然后再继续。莱特币刚才还是负的，现在回一点血了，可能莱特币吸了一点血，震荡一下，震一些出来。大家如果 Doge 来的话，我给大家开那个视频。他有一个位置，他睡觉的位置，我把摄像头对着他睡觉的位置。他现在应该在楼上睡。嘿嘿 ，no no no，Puffy。OK。开始播，闻到姜的味道。
对呀，我在等姜，等一下就要汤，要吃吗
？OK。好，给你们看 Fluffy 啊，这是 Doge 睡觉的位置，他睡在一台咖啡机上面。他现在还没来。哎，Puffy， 哇，这个猫，它直接坐在我键盘上，过来 ，OK， 啊，对，说话。 们听得到它在咕噜咕噜吗？嗯。哎，好，来，可以啊。我不会下播，我应该就在这里。什么情况？飞。哎，开始了，看一下，30秒。我今天应该就一整天在这边吧，我旁边开着游戏打，所以应该不会无聊。 就只是在这里挖矿而已。阿飞 here， 阿飞，所以现在黏人。我这个摄像头很坏。你出来，你屁股坐在我的那个滑鼠上。我把它刷新一下。怎么又加1个小时？什么情况 ？First polls close at 6点 PM Eastern。什么情况啊？我看有没有别的网站啊？这个也知道，它可能很多不同的数据吧。反正他投票可以一直投到晚上7点都还可以投的，所以我不知道这是什么意思。Results around 7点，所以我这边晚上7点，因为我是在这个时区嘛，就是最慢的时区，所以可能7点才开始出票，因为7点才开始停止投票。我这边7点，所以现在可能就是干等，可能大家也不用等那么久。我们大概就每一周的时间都不一样。OK， 所以应该是有的州已经开始有了，可能 East Coast 这边已经开始慢慢截止了吧。痛吗？可能他是一周一周慢慢进来的，所以就慢慢等嘛。他可能有的地方已经开始，他这里有写，你看每一个的时间不一样，所以我也不确定什么情况。有一些东西出来了 ，Governor， 反正今天投了很多东西，不只是总统。我们来开一个，我看没有什么一个现场直播的新闻，这样不知道会不会被版权。拿过来一下 ，Fox、NBC。那是什么？我找一个频道看啊，找个现场。我看一下 Twitter。Jim Cramer 又出来了。Jim Cramer 说市场在提示 Kamala 会赢，这个人不是反指标之王，所以我们可能有希望。 你看人家搜，现在很多这种狗装操控，人家说 Where can I vote for？ 然后第一个就是填 Harris President Early Voting President 2024。Dancing with the Stars， 它是全部什么都有，就是没有 Trump。然后 search so where can I vote for Trump， 就是空的。我看一下是不是这是真的还是假的。Where can I vote presidential election？ 好像改掉了，可能被发现了，还把它改掉了。这是刚刚的事情。对啊，这可能没了。还有一个给大家看的 YouTube 的，关于我们心爱的莱特币。你看，如果你搜 Litecoin 在 YouTube， 你看它提示的什么东西？它下面的 suggestion。Bitcoin、Bitcoin Life、Bitcoin News、Bitcoin 半个 Litecoin 都没有。那你会觉得是不是只有这个币这样，还是所有币的这样？它就只专门打压 Litecoin， 我不知道为什么。你看 Dogecoin 没问题 ，Ethereum 没问题，那 Zcash 呢 ？Zcash 都没有问题。那为什么 Litecoin 会有这个现象？我是真的不太懂。YouTube 想要打压 Litecoin，YouTube 也想要打压 Trump、Elon 这些。对，反正他们就是需要打压 Litecoin 就对了，不知道为什么，这是不是很奇怪？还有什么币 ？Caspa 没有问题，还有什么币？大家比较火 ，Solana 肯定没有问题，这狗装币嘛 ，Solana 肯定保护费、广告费都交满了。Polygon 也没问题 ，Polygon。Matic 没了，它是 rebrand。Polygon 也没有，还是我拼错？对啊，就只有 Litecoin 有这个问题，这是一种 censorship， 蛮奇怪的。然后之前 Google 也是搜 Litecoin 的时候是全部都是 Bitcoin 的，后来好像改掉了，现在就还好。是 YouTube 还是有这个问题？就类似这种东西，叫做洗脑操控。有人提了1 billion 颗 Doge， 刚才7个小时前，应该是交易所钱包吧，估计。没有啊，没有那么多啊。1 billion 有哎。我刚才去也排队去投票，要给大家看我刚才投的，刚投票，刚好去一个高中投票， 大概这样子，等了大概半个小时吧。等嘛，应该是晚上出票，因为现在都还可以投，所以现在应该都还没有什么。
Gives you a sense of how close this race is.
Consciously, yes.
Exactly.
You're hearing that a lot too.
Yeah, it's how close this race is. Let's talk about African American men in all of this, because we know that there has been a concern that she hasn't been getting the numbers that she needs with African American men, a critical part of the Biden coalition. For example, we know former President Barack Obama was out trying to energize them. She rolled out an agenda specifically for Black men. How do they feel as though their get out the vote efforts are panning out today?
Well, look, the campaign does feel it's going extremely well. You just saw Vice President Harris just a few moments ago at the DNC for that photo op at that phone bank. Now, campaign officials are trying to brush off those stories that enthusiasm is low among young Black men. They're brushing them off as sort of overblown. But you can't deny, Kristen, that the campaign has been focusing on that demographic quite a bit over the last several weeks. Former President Obama also voicing that concern in one of those stops. And look, for First Lady Michelle Obama was also out making that case. So they have been going towards that demographic quite a bit, trying to get them out to the polls in these last several days. They feel that it has been working. They're very encouraged by the early turnout numbers, but not just Black men. We saw yesterday they're really going after Puerto Ricans in places like Pennsylvania. They think that that could be the key in order to win such an important blue wall state, Pennsylvania, Kristen.
Well, Gabe, I know we've all got a long night ahead. Thank you so much for your reporting on the ground there from outside of Howard University. Julie Sirkin, let me turn to you now. You are in Pittsburgh, in the all-important battleground state of Pennsylvania. I just spoke to an election official in the Philadelphia area who said that there was robust turnout there. What are you hearing? What are voters telling you today?
Kristen, robust turnout here as well. Election officials here, state representatives I talked to a couple of minutes ago telling me that they have surpassed both mail-in ballot numbers and, of course, the people who are showing up at the polls, not only where I am right now in northwest suburbs of Pittsburgh, but really throughout the entirety of Allegheny County, which is really a blue island surrounded by red counties that have trended even more red over the last couple of elections. I spoke to one Democratic official here familiar with how this area operates and works, and he told me that in order for Harris to win Pennsylvania, he's got to outperform the way Biden did in Allegheny County. He got 59%. They say Harris needs to meet that or exceed it. If she gets anything under 55%, around the number that Hillary Clinton got in 2016, she's in trouble in the state. I talked to a lot of voters as well. In a swingy state, you get swingy opinions. Take a listen to the key demographic for both parties, which is suburban women.
I voted straight Democrat, which I've pretty much always done. I'm just afraid of what would happen if Trump got in.
I feel his way is going to be really crazy, and I just would fear not only for my democracy, but I'm old, my children, my grandchildren, my grandchildren's children, and that's how I really looked at it. It was really important.
Voted straight Democrat.
Yeah,
I'm a lifelong Republican. Because I feel that although she doesn't represent all my values, she represents more of them than the Republicans do right now. And I'm very concerned about the split in the Republican Party, and until they fix that, I can't consider myself a true Republican anymore.
Now, that woman you heard from, her name is Diane. She's 65 years old. She told me she, for example, is anti-abortion, but that issue is so important for her because she believes in choice. That is something we've heard often here. We, of course, also heard from Trump voters, including a 19-year-old first-time voter who decided to vote for the former president.
Just fascinating, Julie Sirkin. Fantastic interviews, great reporting on the ground there. Thank you. Blaine Alexander, let me turn to you. It's so great to have you back just in time for Election Day. You're there in Fulton County. Georgia's Secretary of State office says more than half of all active voters in the state cast their ballots early. So talk about turnout today, and welcome back, my friend.
Thank you so much. Good to be back with you. And got a little bit going on here in Georgia. So yes, absolutely. We're talking about more than half of the registered voters here in the state had already cast a ballot by the time polls opened this morning. And so that really does kind of have an impact on Election Day. Why is that? Because 4 million people, more than 4 million people had already cast their ballot. I've got to say, Kristen, that among our team, we have visited more than a dozen polling locations throughout the day across Metro Atlanta. We have not seen any lines. I've talked to people and they said that the wait time has ranged from about 15, 20 minutes early this morning to less than 5 minutes. That's really what we're hearing from people across the state. And that is a large reflection of what we saw, that record-breaking early voting turnout. Now, as for the ballots we've seen cast today, the Secretary of State about an hour or so ago said that they've had more than 700,000 people just today come out and cast those ballots. So what does that mean in terms of how the state may go? Well, I spoke with one senior Democrat official here in the state, and they say that they're watching two things: who is voting and where people are voting. Now, because of that early vote turnout, they're getting a lot of that. A lot of those eyes, as we've talked about, has been focused on black voters. Here in Georgia, the early vote turnout, more than 1 million black voters have cast their ballot. That is a state record. That's a very large number, and that's something that they're watching very closely. The question now, of course, is who's coming out today. The other thing, Kristen, that I think is important to point out is when we will start to see results. You'll remember, of course, back in 2020, Georgia wasn't called for more than a week after Election Day. Well, this time around, state law mandates that all counties have to start tabulating those early votes and many of the absentee ballots, most of the absentee ballots, by 8 p.m., an hour after polls close. So that means that we should see a good majority of those votes start to be tabulated very quickly tonight. Kristen.
Just fascinating stuff from the ground there in Georgia. Blaine, thank you so much. Great to see you. Shaq, let me turn to you now. In all-important Milwaukee, what are voters telling you there? Blaine is saying that the wait time not as long as you might anticipate there, likely because there were so many early votes. What are you seeing in Milwaukee?
Well, Kristen, despite the rain that you may see and hear around me, it's been a steady flow of people going at this polling location. The clerk actually told me this morning there was a line of people that went on about an hour long, so that shows some of the enthusiasm that you have here. One of my favorite conversations was a voter who said he was undecided until this morning. He decided to take 2 laps around this park here, and that's when he ultimately made a decision. He went to back Vice President Kamala Harris, but I want you to listen to some of the other conversations I had with folks today. Are you willing to share who you supported in this election?
Sure. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Why Donald Trump?
I just think we need a change, and I think that, trying to grow in my career and things like that, some of the things that I feel that he can set forth and that he had in the past could be done again.
Donald J. Trump, J.D. Vance, absolutely.
Why those two?
The Democrats have, I want to say, overpromised and underdelivered the black community for decades, and I'm sick and tired of it, and I want to see a change.
We need to preserve and restore certain democratic freedoms. I really want to see us moving forward and not going backwards. To me, Harris was the clear choice to keep things free in the U.S.
Now, as you saw in some other states, there was also a high number of early vote in Wisconsin. The problem is that early vote was just able to start getting processed today, so that may lead to some delays once we get in the reporting phase later this evening, Kristen.
Well, it's always, again, just so fascinating to hear from the voters. It is their day. Shaq Brewster, thank you for bringing us those great interviews. Priscilla, you're out in Arizona, still relatively early out west, but how has voter turnout been there so far?
Yeah, Kristen, we just got an update from Maricopa County saying that nearly 150,000 voters have checked in across the county today. That's adding to the more than 2 million who voted early. And I want to just give you a look inside of a voter's shoes. They are walking up and they are getting Harris supporters offering them voter guides. There are Trump supporters here also offering their voter guides. So trying to capture what any voters who may be undecided before they hit this point, and then they are walking in all on their own. There are about 80 people in line right now. We've been out here talking to a lot of these voters, and I want to play a little bit of some of what we're hearing. Take a listen.
People are dying. Women that's can't carry a child, needing to have this child taken out, and you're telling me that this woman has to die because the doctors are scared, which is totally understandable. That's horrible to me. And that's putting everybody's life in risk.
Our economy, our country's going bankrupt. And if we vote democratically, we are going to be in a worse situation than we are now. They don't care about the borders. They don't care about the American people.
And a ballot measure protecting the right to abortion is on the ballot here. So we've heard a lot of passion from Democrats who are turning out on that issue, but also Republicans talking about immigration and the economy and just that they believe Donald Trump will take the country in the right direction. So we will see how it all turns out here in many more hours when polls close here very late, 10 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Kristen.
Fascinating interviews, and so important to remind our viewers that there is an abortion ballot measure. It will be very interesting to see how that impacts turnout and the ultimate results. Priscilla Thompson, great stuff. Thank you from Battleground, Arizona, and thanks to our entire team for an incredible start. We have got much more Election Day coverage to get to coming up. I'll talk to California's senator and a longtime ally to Vice President Harris about the state of the presidential race and the fight for Senate control. Senator LaFonza Butler joins me next, live from the Harris campaign's election headquarters. Plus, stay tuned for even more special election night coverage straight ahead. It all kicks off at 5 p.m. Eastern with live analysis as the very first exit polls start coming in right here on NBC News Now. You're watching a very special Election Day edition of Meet the Press Now. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Was a Biden seat in 2020. Same is true in the New York 19th. A Biden seat in 2020, a first-term Republican trying to hold on to it. Same deal on Long Island in New York's 4th. A first-term Republican trying to hold on to a seat Joe Biden won in 2020.
Scott McFarland, thank you. And our Ed O'Keefe joins us now at the desk. He's going to be here throughout the whole night with us with the analysis only he can give. So stay tuned for that. Another state, of course, that we are watching where Democrats have argued they could stage an upset is Texas. Incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz has been in office for more than a decade and is facing a pretty formidable challenge by Democratic Congressman Colin Allred. Omar Villafranca, who's covering that race for us, is in Dallas. Omar, Democrats have had their eyes on this seat for a while now. What's the feeling in Texas this afternoon?
Well, the Democrats are watching this. They're optimistic, but nobody's flat out saying that they have this one. Now, Ted Cruz is seeking a third term here, but Democrats are hoping that Colin Allred can close that gap and possibly upset this race. Now, keep in mind, if that happens, if Colin Allred beats Ted Cruz, not only does that have implications for Texas, that will have national implications as well. So a lot of eyes will be on this race.
All right, Omar Villafranca in Dallas for us. Omar, thank you very much. All right, Ed, let's talk about what you're seeing tonight. I mean, we just got a really good picture of what we can expect in the House and the Senate from McFarland, but just writ large, this race, this campaign, you've been covering it since the beginning. Break it down for us.
I mean, tonight is the resolution, or tonight in the next few days, certainly the resolution of one of the most acrimonious I think the country's ever had, certainly in modern history. I think we're going to see some surprises, whether it's at the presidential level or congressional level, we'll wait and see. But given how tumultuous this whole year has been, something that's supposed to be up is probably going to be down, something that's supposed to be down is probably going to be up. We're side to side, and we'll just have to wait and see. I think that poll over the weekend, for example, from Iowa that got everyone talking, is an indicator that there are things happening in different states that suggest some kind of realignment or just a desire to vote differently for whatever reason is underway. Don't be surprised, for example, if we see tighter margins here in New York, over in New Jersey, or in states like Utah and Iowa, out west and in the middle of the country, simply because this has driven out more people who feel strongly about this, and who may be picking and choosing from both sides, believing that it's time to get back to a point where you vote for someone who's president and then vote for someone else down the ballot.
Real quick, since we're going to get some of the exit polling here in just about 35 minutes, what are you going to be watching for most?
Let's see if we get early indications of what really were the big issues of concern for those that showed up, not only today, but over the last several weeks have been voting. Is it still the economy? Do we see signs that something like abortion rights or the future of democracy also broke through? If it does, that's encouraging news for Democrats.
Yeah, it seems, though, as if that has been the theme throughout this campaign, right? Immigration, the economy, and gender rights. Those are the three issues that everybody's talking about. So we'll see if it bears out in that exit polling. All right, Ed O'Keefe, great to have you here at the desk. So where did you cast your vote? At a school, maybe City Hall. That's where I did it. That's where I got to vote. So there's been settings around the country that are fairly unique, though.
Yeah, we scoured the country for some of the more unusual polling places. In Philadelphia, some residents vote at the Mummers Museum. It chronicles the history of the city's annual New Year's Day Mummers Parade, an event more than a century old featuring lavish costumes and performances.
While in New York City, a massive space with a retractable roof known as the Shed in the Hudson Yards neighborhood rolls out the voting booths.
All right, but two of the most unique polling places in America can be found in Chicago. Voters there can make their presidential picks while bowling at the Lawn Lane Bowl, or perhaps picking out a new dress at the Celebrations Fashion Boutique. Pretty interesting places there.
That's cool. Bowling and voting.
Get a little shopping in, do a little voting.
That's right. Let's talk about Nevada, which has gone blue for the last 4 presidential elections. Can Vice President Harris make it 5, or will former President Trump flip the battleground state? Our Lily Luciano is in Las Vegas with more on who Nevada voters are betting on for the White House.
I know for a fact that, Kamala is going for reproductive rights, and I have a lot of women in my life that are very important to me, so I just wanted to support them and make sure I got that vote out there.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Just 2.5 hours from the first polls closing. They'll close in 6 states, including battleground Georgia at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to our special election night, America Decides coverage live from New York City. I'm Vladimir Duthier.
And I'm Lindsay Reiser. This campaign cycle has changed a lot in a very short amount of time. We have seen multiple historic moments in just a matter of months. On June 27th, there was the debate between former President Trump and President Biden, which of course, led to calls from multiple Democrats for Biden to step aside from the ticket.
Then, former President Trump survived an assassination attempt during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, just before the Republican National Convention, where he officially clinched his party's nomination for president. Then, on July 21st, President Biden officially ended his re-election bid and handed his endorsement to Vice President Kamala Harris. She held her first campaign event just 2 days later.
It has all led to this moment. Both campaigns' paths to 270 electoral votes to win the White House goes through the 7 battleground states we have been talking about all year. 4 of them are located in the so-called Sun Belt, 2 in the east and 2 in the west. One of those states, of course, is Nevada, and that's where we find our Lilia Luciano. Lilia.
Hey there, Lindsay, Vlad. We are in Las Vegas. This is a city where we've heard from voters on both sides, where 100,000 or more voters have voted today on Election Day in person. But that's just a fraction of the nearly 1.1 million voters who either cast their ballots by mail or in person early. The breakdown in terms of voters and how they were registered, there were about 43,000 more registered Republicans who voted this time around early. But here's the thing about the state. The largest sector or section of the electorate is people who are either nonpartisan, independent, or people who sign off on any other category, but whose affiliation we don't know. Both sides are trying to get their vote, and part of what we're hearing is it's all about the economy. For more on another battleground state, I'm going to go to my colleague, Chris Van Cleve, who's in Phoenix, Arizona. Chris.
Lilia, thanks. Arizona's 11 electoral votes up for grabs. The polls open until 7 p.m. local time. And much like Nevada, the bulk of the voting here happens early or by mail. Here in Maricopa County, home to about 60% of the voters. It's the nation's 4th largest county. More than 1.5 million early votes are already been received. We know in this county alone, about another 154,000 people as of 2:30 local time have shown up to vote in person. Voting, of course, those numbers will be bigger statewide as we move towards 7 p.m. when the polls close. Key issues here, the border, immigration, the economy, as well as reproductive rights. Abortion is on the ballot here in Arizona. The other concern we heard a lot from Harris supporters, protecting democracy. We're going to check in now with my colleague Skylar Henry, who is in Raleigh, North Carolina, another key swing state. Raleigh.
Elections officials say for the most part, the more than 2,600 polling places throughout the state have been running smoothly. There is one hiccup, forcing officials to have to hold a meeting to determine whether there should be an extension in nearby Wilson County. That's about 55 miles east of where we are here in Raleigh. There was a printing issue there. They say that because of that, that could lead to a bit of a delay in terms of when we receive the ballot count from that county. But as for the rest of the state, groundbreaking and historic record-breaking numbers. We're talking about 4.5 million voters that submitted their ballots early. They anticipate some 1 million voters to do the same here on Election Day. Now over to my colleague Mark Strassman reporting in Atlanta.
Thanks, Skylar. So far, so good here in Georgia. This is the Fulton County Elections Hub and Operations Center. Fulton County is the biggest puzzle piece on the Georgia map. About 750,000 active voters here, the most populous county in Georgia. And those 750,000 are about 1 in 10 Georgia voters. There were some disruptions today, bomb threats and scares in at least a handful of precincts here. No bombs, but 2 precincts had to close for at least a half hour, and they may extend the hours of voting by that same half hour. A judge has to rule on that. In total, statewide, 4 million Georgians voted early. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is expecting another million to vote today. So that's 5 million votes that need to be counted in an election that officials have promised will be fast, fair, accurate, and transparent. Lindsay and Vlad?
All right, Mark Strassman in Atlanta for us, where they tend to report right after the polls close, so we'll be watching. Ed O'Keefe is back with us, along with our political panel, Chuck Rocha and Matt Gorman. Chuck is a Democratic strategist who formerly served as a senior advisor for Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns, and Matt Gorman is a Republican strategist who served as a senior communications advisor for Senator Tim Scott's presidential campaign. Great to have all of you here at the table. Welcome. All right, so Chuck, let's begin with you. 2 years ago at this point, there was a lot of talk of a red wave. I think what's been fascinating over the last couple of weeks especially is to see how cautious pollsters are going into tonight. No one wants to be caught red-footed the way that they were back in 2016 and the way that they were 2 years ago. What's going on?
You're exactly right. And what they didn't account for is new voters. And I was talking about this earlier in the green room about we don't know who these new voters are that are showing up. It looks like, from all indications, that vote is up. Like, more folks are voting. When we do polling, we look at a guesstimation of what voted the last time. 2020, that's the last election we had where there was a presidential election. Voting is up then. And what pollsters have found, and they're very cautious to your point about it, is they don't want to make that mistake. So they're estimating that it'll be about the same as 2020. I remind everybody, and we were talking about it, it was easier to vote in 2020 because of COVID. So everybody's being super cautious. But when you have a big turnout, there's no telling who that big turnout's going to help because you don't know who the new voters are because they weren't polled.
So, Matt, Trump's final message has bordered on dystopian. We heard from Drinka Duncan in Michigan, who said that that's speaking to maybe some fear that voters have about where the country is headed. Do you think that that helps appeal more to his base, or do you think that his closing message has swayed some undecideds?
Look, fear's a good motivator, and it's also a contrast, right? It's Trump will fix it, and Kamala and the Biden administration broke it. And I think what you're seeing is also now, to Chuck's point, we don't also know how to quantify momentum, this new era where you've been voting for a month already, right? Do you peak a week and a half ago? Do you peak today? Obviously, you'd want to peak in both places, but really it's not always possible. And you've also seen the message evolution from, say, the Harris campaign, right? They're talking about something today that was very different than a week ago when they're talking about democracy on the National Mall. So what we're still figuring out is, and I think this will tell us a lot tonight, as you go into the full month of voting, right? It's no longer one day like it was in 2000, 2004, where everybody kind of jammed in one. How do you evolve your message strategy? And how do you evolve a campaign where you're going to have highs and lows just that month when people are going to the ballot box?
Ed, you want to jump in?
Well, I'm just curious. You guys do a lot of work down the ballot as well. You got any bright spots tonight or races you're watching beyond the presidential race?
A couple of things, bellwethers to look for in the House. Pennsylvania 7, Susan Wild up in Lehigh County. That's a very even race. She's an incumbent. If she goes down or it's extremely tight, what does that portend statewide in Pennsylvania? Also, Michigan 7, open seat, Alyssa Slotkin going to run for Senate. That's Oakland County. That's swing district, open seat. Again, if Republican Tom Barrett wins there, tell me something about Michigan.
I'm super excited about the Arizona Senate race. Ruben Gallego is one of my best friends. I've been on that campaign for almost 2 years. I was reminiscing coming up here about our kickoff was in January of 2023. He may overperform the top of the ticket by 6 points. And so if he does that, that's going to tell us something about what's the difference between the campaign Ruben Gallego ran and the campaign that Vice President Harris ran.
Do you think Arizona will be a split ticket with Gallego and Trump both taking it?
I can tell you, since people are already voting, there is a large percentage of Trump Gallego supporters in Arizona.
Yeah, that is fascinating. The other thing that I think is really sort of interesting, and both of you guys can talk about this, is gender in this race. I mean, I've seen the very online young men who support Donald Trump getting online and saying, get out there and vote. But we're seeing an enormous amount of women going to the polls. Back in 2020, President Biden relied on African-American women. In this case, it looks like the vice president may not just get African-American women, but also white women who in the past may have voted Republican. What do you say?
I think this is going to be the story of the night, is the battle of the gender gaps. And look, if we win men by more than we lose women, then we'll win, and vice versa for the Democrats. That is what I'm watching extremely closely right now. And I think, look, there was a calculation made on the Republican side that, certainly we've had our troubles with women over the past, say, 4 years, especially in the Trump era. Instead of trying to arrest that, we're like, can we get a couple more points with men on the margins, especially low propensity voters, African-American men, Hispanic men? We'll know the answer tonight.
One thing I want to take you back to Arizona, because if he overperforms, it's going to be because of men. And we're going to be looking at the way that messaging work on this men vote. And I think the Iowa poll told us or gave us a glimpse into something. Not one poll means anything, but that poll in a very wide area, me and Ed spent a lot of time in Iowa together, actually. It's a very wide area. It showed me that white women are really showing up, but independent white women and Republican white women, who we assume was some kind of a shadow vote, but nobody could prove it. It just gives you a glimpse that that could be happening.
Fascinating.
Chuck and Matt, thank you so much. And Ed, you're stuck with us. You're staying forever. Thank you so much. Immigration, of course, one of the top issues on voters' minds. We're going to take a closer look at that issue and how a Harris or Trump presidency could shape it moving forward.
Well, I mean, 1 + 1 = 2. And if you get enough ones, it's going to come up to the big number. Every vote counts. Every single person is important.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The End of Affirmative Action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions. What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded 1-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
It can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7. That is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this?
Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A look there at our Times Square studio on this big night, election night 2024. Of course, immigration reform has long been a top issue in Washington in recent years, but we've also seen the issue permeate in states far from the U.S.-Mexico border.
CBS News immigration and campaign reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez is at the border in Arizona tonight, and he joins us to talk about this. So, Camilo, Arizonans are not just voting for the president, they're also deciding on some very important ballot initiatives like abortion and immigration. Tell us about them.
Hi, Lindsay and Vlad. That is completely right. Voters here in the battleground and border state of Arizona will not just be deciding the presidential election, they will be deciding more than a dozen important and key policy initiatives on the ballot, including on questions on immigration and abortion. Proposition 139 would codify abortion rights to the state's constitution, and Proposition 314 would allow the state to arrest migrants if they are suspected of crossing this border behind me illegally. Crossing this border is already a federal crime if you do so without the permission of Customs and Border Protection, Vlad and Lindsay. But Proposition 314 would turn it into a state crime, giving local law enforcement officials here the power to arrest, jail, and prosecute suspected migrants. And this measure has deeply divided residents and law enforcement officials alike. We actually spoke to the sheriffs of Cochise and Santa Cruz County here in Arizona about their divergent views on Proposition 314. Let's take a listen to that interview.
And now we're dealing with all the state crimes related to the border. Now you're going to add immigration crimes on there too. I don't have the infrastructure, I don't have the staffing, I don't have the funding, as stated.
I would not enforce that law because A, I think it's dangerous. We're going to get sued for racial profiling, and B, this has already been adjudicated by the courts and has been determined to be unconstitutional. Another thing, it would create distrust within the community.
As you just heard, Sheriff Mark Daniels of Cochise County supports Proposition 314, but he's concerned about not having the manpower, Lindsay and Vlad, or the funding to enforce it. But he still believes that it will pass because he believes Arizonans are fed up with what he calls federal inaction here at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Camilo, we've also seen immigration come up as a major issue in states that are not along the border. You've reported on that a ton this cycle. What have you learned in places like Ohio?
Well, look, we know that, for example, in Ohio, the town of Springfield has become an epicenter of our national debate, our polarizing debate over immigration. Former President Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, have made comments, false comments, I should add, that Haitian migrants were eating or harming pets. That obviously is not true. But there are some legitimate issues in that town with the influx of Haitian migrants and how they obviously are straining local resources, hospitals, and housing. But obviously the comments made by former President Trump and Vance were false, and they really just illustrate how politicized our immigration debate here in the U.S. has become.
All right, Camilo Montoya Galvez in Arizona for us. Thank you, Camilo. Appreciate it. Officials in every state are working to ensure that this year's elections are secure. Our democracy desk is tracking any potential threat to the vote. We'll check in with them next. You're watching America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this
this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to our special America Decides election coverage. Our team of experts at the Democracy Desk tonight are keeping tabs on any issues that could come up at polling locations, explaining how we're watching the vote tallies come in and when we might expect races to be called.
Ed O'Keefe is back with us. I told him he couldn't get rid of us, alongside our Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga and election law expert David Becker. Good to see both of you. You know, Nicole, we know there was an incident at the U.S. Capitol today. What can you tell us?
Yeah, the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center was closed this afternoon after Capitol Police arrested a man who was carrying on his person a torch and a flare gun during their security vetting process. The Capitol Police chief saying during a news conference moments ago that he smelled like fuel. And according to a Capitol Police spokesperson, the man was in his late 20s and was submitted to this routine screening at the Visitor Center when police arrested him. Police also saying he was trying to deliver papers to Congress. Of course, Congress right now is not in session, but the House is scheduled to meet for a brief pro forma later today. There's no indication as of this point that this threat is connected to the election. And of course, right now in D.C., U.S. Capitol Police, D.C. Police, U.S. Secret Service, all on high alert.
Of course, David, over in Pennsylvania, we saw the PA, the Philadelphia District Attorney telling folks to F around and find out when it comes to election violence. But officials today in Cambria County, Pennsylvania, have asked to extend voting hours because of a software malfunction. What happens in a situation like that, and what should anyone still in line waiting to vote know about that?
So we should remember that there's probably about 80 million people trying to vote today in a process run by millions of volunteers. So it's normal that there's always some hiccups here and there, and this is one of those hiccups. The machines were not accepting the ballots into the scanner for some reason. It looks like there might have been a barcode problem on those ballots. It didn't affect anyone voting. The ballots are still going to be put in a secure drop box and tabulated later tonight. But because of the delay, everyone in the county agreed, Republicans, Democrats, the Board of Elections, that they should extend hours from 8 to 10 in Pennsylvania. We saw something similar in Georgia. There's a minor problem in a couple places in Cobb County, Georgia, that are going to stay open. It looks like an extra 20 minutes from about 7 p.m. to 7:20.
That's because of those bomb threats, right, David?
possibly the bomb threats. I think there are also some minor issues here and there with machines, very, very minor.
Sure.
Again, no long lines, no big problems. We're seeing pretty good, pretty smooth elections, even with disinformation flooding the environment right now. It's really remarkable how well election officials have prepared for this so far. If they're in line, get in line before the polls close. If you're in line when the polls close, you get to vote, so stay in line.
And Nicole, in our remaining minute, speaking of Georgia, Fulton County officials say they're investigating a number of bomb threats. What more do we know about those and the security concerns we've seen not only in Georgia but across the country today?
Yeah, Ed, officials in at least 2 states, Maine and Georgia, say police have responded to threats against schools and polling places today. None of them credible. Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, saying in a news conference that officials had identified the source, that it was from Russia. The FBI also putting out a statement indicating many of the threats appear to originate from Russian email domains. You know, law enforcement officials estimate about 30 bomb threat hoaxes have targeted election-related locations nationwide. According to 2 sources familiar with the matter, about 17 fake bomb threats have targeted the state of Georgia alone. 2 people familiar with the investigation told CBS News. These numbers are fluid. They could change. Officials believe they're part of a foreign effort to disrupt election activity. Good news here, none of this actually impacting the results of the U.S. election, and Homeland Security officials continue to stress it is safe to vote, no credible threats to polling stations.
All right, David Becker and Nicole Skanga at the Democracy Desk. We'll check in with you all night long. Thank you very much.
And Ed, real quick, we're going to have exit polling data here in roughly 5 minutes at the top of the 5. Why does that matter?
It starts to give us a sense of how exactly this may shape out, because we're going to get a sense broadly of the issues of concern to voters today. What was it that was driving them to the polls? We may, over the course of the next few hours, then get a better sense as the information fills in who exactly was turning out today versus early voting. But ultimately, we just want to see who won.
All right. After a huge surge in early and mail-in voting, millions of Americans are still heading to the polls to cast their ballots. Ahead, we're going to take you back to the candidates' campaign headquarters. You're watching our special America Decides election night coverage.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
any cracks in the Republican Party?
party. Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Just get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia.
Oh, no.
I will if you will.
You go down.
A very big welcome to a special election night edition of America Decides. We're happy to have you. I'm Lindsay Reiser.
And I'm Vladimir Gutierrez, joined by our colleague Ed O'Keefe here in Studio 57 at the CBS News Broadcast Center. We expect to get our first look at exit polling any minute now. It is our first glance at who is voting and which issues are driving voters to the polls, both nationally and in those critical battleground states.
Of course, this has been a campaign year like no other. Several assassination attempts, a change at the top of the ticket, a sprint for the new Democratic nominee to pick a running mate and introduce herself to voters, just to name a few.
And if elected, Vice President Kamala Harris would be the first female president, the first black woman to hold the office, and the first Indian American president. Meanwhile, if former President Trump wins, he would become the first president since Grover Cleveland and those mutton chops in the late 19th century to serve non-consecutive terms.
And as we'll keep reminding you all night, we may not know the winner before most Americans go to bed or even when they wake up in the morning. That is all our new normal as more Americans vote early and vote by mail.
And we have reporters spread out across the country tonight, and we're going to be checking in with them in just a moment.
First, let's go to the Trump and Harris headquarters. We're going to start with CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes in Washington, D.C., who is monitoring Harris and her campaign. Nancy, good to see you. We talked to you about an hour ago. How's the crowd looking at Howard?
Good to see you. No major crowd just yet, and that's because folks don't expect that the vice president will actually be coming out and speaking for several hours. But the quad or the yard behind me here at Howard University will be filling up throughout the night. A short time ago, we did see the vice president make a stop at Democratic headquarters here in Washington, D.C. to thank her volunteers, thank her staffers who have been working so hard for her for the past few months. She did a little bit of phone banking as well, which led to one funny moment where she called a woman who was sitting at home watching the vice president on TV give her a call. You sort of know you've slipped into some sort of fourth dimension when something like that happens. Nevertheless, we're told that she is going to be spending time with her family this evening, extended family. Her husband, the second gentleman, actually did a little bit of last-minute campaigning in one of the battleground states today, so he's got to come back here to D.C., but she'll be with her sister and nieces. That's a tradition for the Harris family before coming out here to speak at some point tonight. We don't know when.
All right, Nancy Cordes for us in Washington at Howard University. Nancy, thank you very much. Let's go over to Florida. What were you going to say?
We're all in a fourth dimension.
I know, it does feel like that. It has felt like that for the last couple
Especially
of months.
Ed, I don't think he's going to sleep tonight. It's like, what time is it? Is it 5? Is it 3? I don't know.
I feel exactly where you're coming from, Lindsay. Let's get over to Florida, where CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is covering the Trump campaign. Caitlin.
Lindsay and Vlad, happy Election Day from here in Florida. The former president landed here in the early hours after a long rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan last night that lasted until 2 in the morning. Early today. Former president cast his ballot in this presidential election in West Palm Beach with his wife, former First Lady Melania Trump, by his side. He also raised some doubts about the integrity of the election, railing against voting machines, even though a majority of ballots are cast on paper ballots. Of course, those claims are unfounded there. But it is notable that he is ending his campaign here in Florida tonight. This is the third time that he is appearing on the ballot as the Republican nominee. And at 78 years old, former President Trump has said this will be his last campaign. The campaign is feeling confident that they had blitzed these battleground states. Actually, earlier today, the former president held tele-rallies across battleground states, trying to leave no vote unturned, trying to get out every last vote. So we'll be paying attention here in West Palm Beach as those returns come in. The big question that we're watching is whether the former president comes out and gives a premature acceptance speech like he did 4 years ago. Lindsay and Vlad.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thanks so much. Vice President Harris has made the argument that it's time to, quote, turn the page on divisive politics and unite. Former President Trump has countered that Americans were better off 4 years ago when he was in office. Let's turn to our chief election and campaign correspondent, Robert Costa, who has covered both candidates. Bob, good to see you tonight. Both parties are painting this election as existential. What are you hearing from your sources in both campaigns as voting winds down?
Good to be with both of you. You're seeing from both campaigns a sense behind the scenes that turnout is extraordinarily high across the board for Democrats and for Republicans. How this plays out, whether it means there's a surge of women and men who support abortion rights showing up, and that's going to turn it for Vice President Harris, or whether it means the Trump movement is showing up across the country, no one's really clear at this point, because you're just starting to get this after-work vote as we hit 5 p.m. Eastern. So there's a lot of variables in the air to determine what this turnout means.
Bob, there has been concern over the last few days, or intrigue, about what exactly the former president might do later tonight into early tomorrow morning, depending on how results are going. What's the latest you're hearing about what might transpire?
Well, Ed, some Trump allies, such as Steve Bannon, are urging Trump to declare victory tonight if he appears to be ahead somewhat early in the evening, though that's just one voice of many around the former president. There is a sense among the Trump campaign, among those at the highest level, that what happened in 2020, in their view, was unfair. Trump has continued to make false claims about the election being stolen. And that sensibility, that conclusion, continues to permeate the Trump campaign tonight. This has really been a 4-year project of grievance, unhappiness about 2020. And their skepticism toward the electoral system in this country continues tonight. And that colors, in many ways, how they're approaching their strategy and approach to this evening.
Robert Costa, we look forward to more of your reporting and analysis throughout the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a stellar team of correspondents at polling places in cities in 3 major battleground states. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is in Philadelphia. CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman is in Union City, Georgia. And CBS News correspondent Chris Van Cleve is in Phoenix.
So let's begin first with Weijia, who's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that critical battleground state. Weijia, how have the lines been so far?
Well, there's been a steady stream of voters here at the South Philadelphia High School, where we have been camped out since this morning, and the campaign is feeling optimistic, Vlad, and that's because they say they've left it all on the field. They've worked on this for months now, and in the past weekend alone across the state of Pennsylvania, volunteers knocked on 1.5 million doors. And so we have heard from them that their ground game is extremely robust, that they have been connecting with voters. And of course, we know the vice president spent the entire day in this state yesterday as she closed her campaigning with a massive rally here in Philadelphia. And so I think people here, they understand the assignment. They know that they are at the center of the political universe today, and they are taking this very seriously. They are feeling emotional. We're told that they're excited. Some tell us that they are anxious and losing sleep over what's going to happen. But, you know, this is the beauty of the democratic process, Vlad and Lindsay, and we are watching it play out in this critical battleground state. And it's not just the Harris campaign, of course, watching the turnout, but of course, The Trump team has really been going after low propensity voters in rural areas who historically do not turn out. And that's the people that they have been working to try to convince to come out to the polls for the first time. And we have colleagues spread out all over this state. And what we are hearing from everybody, guys, is that turnout is very, very high. In fact, one state official tells me that Philly is on track to break the record that was set in 2020.
Wow.
Weijia Jiang in Philadelphia, thank you. For the latest in Georgia, let's bring in Mark Strassman. Mark, we know law enforcement officials tell CBS News there were more than a dozen non-credible bomb threats targeting polling places in Georgia alone. 2 of the locations had to be evacuated for some 30 minutes. What's the security situation where you are?
In fact, Lindsay, those 2 that had to be evacuated were here in Fulton County. This is the Fulton County election tabulation center. And in fact, this is where all the votes will come in for Fulton County, Georgia's most populous county, where there are 750,000 likely voters on the rolls. I can also tell you that Fulton County has 177 precincts, and there is a cop on the beat of each and every last one of them, just in case. They want to make sure that these elections are safe, that there are no disruptions, and so far, Lindsay, so good.
All right, Mark Strassman in Union City, Georgia for us this evening. Let's bring in Chris Van Cleve, who's joining us now from Phoenix. So, Chris, I saw somebody on Twitter this morning say, it's crazy that people outside of the United States know about Maricopa County. But Maricopa County will once again be key in this election cycle. So the question is, of course, how long will it take for officials to tabulate those final results?
Well, Vlad, Maricopa County is a great place to live. I don't know why people wouldn't want to know about it, but it's going to take 10 to 13 days, the state says, before Arizona's vote counts will be finalized. And that's normal because so many people vote by mail here. And because of the verification process that goes along with those mail-in ballots, it takes extra time, particularly in close races. Even though if there's a big difference in one of the races, they may be able to call it sooner. We may be able to call it sooner, but it will take them up to 10 to 13 days, they think, to count all of the votes. We should tell you, we have just learned from the Secretary of State here about some bomb threats into a couple of polling places in Navajo County in the northern corner of Arizona. Also hearing about a handful of technical problems in Apache County, another small county in northern Arizona. So the bomb threats spread beyond just Georgia, certainly, into other battleground states.
Chris, what can you tell us about the Senate race there? We were speaking earlier with our political panel, and Chuck Rocha was saying that he believes that Arizona could end up being a split-ticket state with people voting for Trump for president, but Ruben Gallego, a Democrat, for Senate by potentially large margins against Kari Lake.
Yeah, you know, the CBS News poll, the last battleground poll we had from Arizona had Gallego up by about 9 points over Lake. Now, both campaigns think the race is closer than that. Lake says she doesn't believe any of the polls but her internal polls, and those show her leading. But so far, those are the only polls we've seen that show her in the lead. So it is distinctly possible you're either going to see split tickets, or what we've heard from some Republicans is that they may just opt to leave the Senate line blank. So this is certainly a state where one of the things, if you look at the polling, Ruben Gallego is outperforming Kamala Harris here, and very well could result in a split ticket where Donald Trump could win the state, but Gallego wins the U.S. Senate seat that's being vacated by Kyrsten Sinema, who was a Democrat before she became an independent.
Some excellent reporting there from our Chris Van Cleve in Phoenix. And I agree with you, Chris. Maricopa County is absolutely lovely. It's just weird.
I lived there for
you did?
decades. Yes,
really?
I'm from there.
It's just weird that people in Denmark are asking me about it.
Yeah, Maricopa County, side of Arizona.
Oh, boy. Thanks, Chris.
All right, as we mentioned, exit polls are beginning to come in. So this will give us our first glimpse at the 2024 electorate. Vlad, what are we learning about what voters most care about? What do we know so far?
All right, so we're going to start with issues that matter most to voters. This is really interesting. 35% of the people polled say the state of democracy is the most important issue. That's kind of surprising because I would have thought the economy would be number one, but the economy is followed there by a very close second. 31% say the economy. 14% say abortion is the most important issue facing them. Now, let's talk about the condition of the economy, how voters feel about that. 32% of voters say the condition of the economy is good. 67% say it is bad. If you are saying that, then you are most likely hearing the former president's message. In the last year, inflation has been at 21% of voters saying that they see inflation as a severe hardship. 53% say it's a moderate hardship, and 42% say no hardship at all. 24% of voters we polled say the financial situation is better than it was 4 years ago. That's interesting. 45% say it is worse than 4 years ago. 30% say it's just about the same. And finally, 7% of voters, only 7% of voters, feel enthusiastic about the country. 19% say that they are satisfied. 43% of voters are dissatisfied with the country, and 29% say that they are angry. So we're looking at those numbers. What strikes you?
These are the most preliminary bits of data we will get tonight. These will change. Nothing you see right now holds up, even within an hour, as we get more data. That number on anger, 43% or whatever, saying that's, I would have thought that'd be higher.
That's what I would have thought as well.
7% saying things are great. I can understand that, but I would have thought the other one would be higher. Look, what this is suggesting is the economy remains a top concern, but state of democracy was a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, which side was focused mostly on that?
That's the question I have.
Both were in different ways, right? Because Trump at various times has said, if we let them keep running the country, you know, we're never going to be the way we were. But the democracy, the specificity around the future of democracy was more of a democratic message. So that may, again, very preliminary data.
But again, those numbers could change.
They will change. They absolutely will change. But they are the first sampling. You know, it's that, what's the amuse-bouche they bring out to you? And you had a big dinner. This is your election amuse-bouche on a little spoon.
The big entree is coming a couple hours later after the polls close.
Kitchen stays open tonight.
All right, folks, when we come back, we love it.
I'm starving.
We're going to get another look at our exit polling data for some of those key battlegrounds, and we're going to bring back our political panel right here at the table. Stick around.
I like one candidate, you know, but I don't like his behavior, but I like his outcome. And that's important. And I look at it that way.
Get all the CBS News election information at your fingertips, including full access to interactive election maps, push alerts on major races, plus breaking news and 24/7 streaming coverage. Get the free CBS News app now.
Come on, Julia.
Oh, no.
I will if you will.
You go, gal.
That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy.
It's gonna be a
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 mile an hour. This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to our special America Decides Election Night special. I said special twice, all right?
It's okay. It is very special.
It is. We've talked a lot this election cycle about different demographics and really how each candidate has been working to target them. Of course, one of those critical voting blocks is Latino voters. Journalist and producer Soledad O'Brien joins us now on set. Ed O'Keefe is back with us as well.
So, Soledad, let me begin with you because you recently put out this incredible documentary that looked into how there's a fight for Latino political support on the airwaves. But what I'm always fascinated by is, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people when it comes to not just Latinos, but African Americans too, that if you are Black or you are Latino, you're not going to necessarily fit into the bucket of what people consider Latino or Black.
Right.
We're not a monolith.
Yeah.
What do you find?
And I feel like people have been yelling that for a really long time. Not a monolith, not a monolith.
Right.
And it might be actually this election cycle that tells people not a monolith, and I think that's really important. We also talk about the power of the Latino vote just because of sheer demographics. And now I think, again, this might be the election cycle where you see the power of the Latino vote just because the number of new eligible voters, half of those are Latinos. I mean, that is massive. And also, of those new voters, they vote 80% of the time. I mean, that is, again, the impact of that is huge. So not a monolith, and also just potentially could have a real change. This rally, I think, had a big impact, of course.
The one in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about that in a second, but first, as we're keeping in mind not a monolith, what are some of the issues that you keep hearing again and again that are driving Latinos to the polls?
Often people will say immigration. I've been on 10 gajillion immigration panels, and they're like, actually, economy, and in their inflation, kind of under economy. But in a recent poll by Univision, which I find really interesting, while economy, inflation, very high still, mid-high 80s, racism was emerging as an issue at 70%. I thought that was really fascinating. Healthcare for Latinos as well, a really important issue. So kind of the same as kind of any American voter, but I think that new appearance in this poll of racism, again, post this rally is kind of interesting.
Part of the reason why I'm glad we're here together is for years I've been telling people when they get confused, how are you Hispanic if your last name's O'Keefe? I said, have you ever heard of Soledad O'Brien?
We're the Irish thread.
We're the Black Irish
Latino name. So,
but it is, you're joking, but you're not. It's very confusing to people. And of course, Latinos have married a lot of, across a lot of different continents.
And I think part of what this cycle, as you said, this is the one that's going to demonstrate again the power and the influence that we have in different parts of the country and in different ways. I was dwelling on the fact that it was Ricky Martin in Philadelphia last night that was more critical to the Harris campaign than, say, her being out in Las Vegas with other actors and performers that might be there, because it's a reminder that now there's enough in Pennsylvania, in other mid-Atlantic states, that they can throw elections one way or the other. And that's why they've been so intently focused on places like Allentown and Reading and Philadelphia.
And if you look at the swing states, that margin of victory, there are not enough Latino voters in each of those swing states.
But guys, even when people talk, so there's a lot made, for example, the former President Trump is getting Black voters to his camp, right? But it's who are those Black voters? Some of them may be folks who are naturalized Americans from African countries or other places in the Caribbean that are not African Americans. In other words, multi-generational Black Americans living in this country. Perhaps they're breaking for Kamala Harris. But if you are if you are a first-generation person from Nigeria, you maybe don't want to see the chaos at the border as the way the president has painted that. So that's why it's so interesting to dig into those numbers.
And I think one of the challenges we all have going forward in covering politics is algorithms for different voters are so different. Your algorithm's different than mine, is different than yours, is different than yours. So we can't see, unless it's shown to us, what it is those voters are being, sent by campaigns or by those that are influencing information. I tell the story about seeing this ad on my way on the train to Philadelphia a few weeks ago of this black guy telling other black men, you've got to vote for her. Why wouldn't you? She reminds us of our aunt. She reminds us of our mother. Why wouldn't you vote for her? The only reason I saw that ad as a brown guy watching my Hulu app on the train to Philadelphia is because it was being sent to me via stream and it wasn't being aired on broadcast television. If I hadn't been watching at that moment in that space when they were looking for people like with my background,
like you,
I wouldn't have seen it. So when I told the campaign, they said, oh, you got it because we were targeting you. And it's impossible now for us to really get a sense of what it is voters are seeing if we're not seeing those.
But it's been interesting to see what doesn't resonate in our documentary. We could see that, I guess I'd call them social issues, or maybe it's more like social chaos, right? Talking about trans kids, way outsized of the actual impact of the issue, talking about who's using what, did not seem to really resonate with Latino voters. And some of the polling around abortion, I mean, you're looking at Latinos, overwhelmingly Catholic, religious. Actually, it's kind of a mixed bag, far more mixed than you might think, sort of if you were just going to guess at what the polls might show.
My parents are immigrants, extremely liberal. They're not getting behind a lot of the issues that are facing LGBTQ people or trans people. So it's really interesting.
All right, Soledad O'Brien and Ed O'Keefe, thank you both so much.
So good to have you here, Soledad. Oh, man, very happy. All right, Donald Trump says this is the best campaign he's ever run. We're going to get some insight from one of the former president's senior advisors down in Florida. Stick around.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief
of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides, election night coverage. Ed O'Keefe is back with us. Folks, we are less than 2 hours away from the first polls closing, which will begin at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Former President Donald Trump was one of millions of Americans who voted in person today, and Tim Murtaugh joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida. He is a senior advisor with the Trump campaign. Thank you for being here. First off, how do you feel about Trump's closing message? Was it enough to bring in undecided voters?
Well, I think so, because we're now getting some exit polls from CNN, and they show that 72% of the people coming out of the voting booth today describe themselves as dissatisfied or angry, and there's a 58% disapproval rating of Joe Biden and the Kamala Harris administration. So there is, without question, an anti-incumbent mood, and people don't like the direction of the country. And that's why when we're talking about the economy and immigration and the way that America positions itself in the world, that the central message and the closing message of Donald Trump, which is that Kamala Harris broke it and Donald Trump will fix it, we think that does resonate, because that's exactly what people are concerned about, and they're looking for solutions to it.
Tim, let me ask you about the battleground states. There have been reports coming in of large enthusiasm, for example, in the critical battleground state of Pennsylvania. What's been the ground game attack for the campaign in some of those crucial states?
Well, I will tell you that in Pennsylvania in particular, it's a perfect example. Our ground game began years ago in 2020. If you see that the Democrats have historically had a huge voter registration advantage in Pennsylvania, in 2020, there were 750,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in Pennsylvania. And throughout the course of the last 4 years, our ground game has been registering Republicans, and that edge has been cut in half. So now, relative to Democrats, there are now 350,000 more Republicans in Pennsylvania than the last time that Donald Trump was on the ballot. So that's a ground game right there. And I would point out that we are hearing some reports of very high turnout today in the Philadelphia area, but we understand that that is in South Philadelphia and in the far northeast of the city. And those are two areas where Donald Trump has been historically strong in both of his previous runs for president. So we feel very good about the game in Pennsylvania. We also think that the issue set lines up very well. The economy, of course, Kamala Harris has throughout her entire career been hostile to fossil fuels. Fracking is a big industry in Pennsylvania. It's responsible for about 100,000 jobs, and people have very strong concerns about the southern border. There are a number of communities in Pennsylvania which actually have an illegal alien problem, despite the fact that they're over 1,000 miles from the southern border. So we think Pennsylvania lines up very well for us.
Tim, in 2020, the former president declared victory prematurely. A lot of people across the country wondering what's the plan for tonight. Is he going to do it again tonight before all the states have been called?
Well, I think as we see the numbers coming in, and there are going to be a number of states that do report the numbers tonight, I think by the end of tonight we will have a pretty good idea who has won this election. Maybe a lot of those states might not be called, but I think that everyone who's watching it will know what direction it's headed. And I think that in a fair and free election, Donald Trump is going to win this thing, and he'll make that statement at the appropriate time.
And Tim, before we go, when you say fair and free election, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to the former president?
It means that all the laws are followed. That means that everyone who is eligible to vote and wanted to vote can vote, and that those votes are legally cast and legally counted. That's what a free and fair election means to us, and I dare say that should be what it means to everybody.
All right, Tim Murtaugh joining us from West Palm Beach, Florida this evening. Tim, thank you very much.
Vice President Harris has had less than 4 months to persuade voters across the country to elect her as the next president of the United States.
But our next guest has known and supported the vice president for more than a decade. California Democratic Senator LaFonza Butler is joining us now. Senator, thanks so much for being with us this evening. You've been, as we said, an ally to the vice president since she first ran for the California Attorney General back in 2010. How has she evolved as a politician since then?
Thanks so much for having me. Look, I think the vice president has taken the time that she's had to make a very strong case to the American people about what kind of leader she's prepared to be on behalf of all of America. Whether you're talking about issues of the economy, speaking directly to voters and meeting them where they are. What California has prepared the vice president to be able to do, and I think the American people have seen this throughout this short period of campaigning, is building a coalition. California is more than just Los Angeles and the Golden Gate Bridge. It is 58 counties. It is rural and urban. It is everything in between. And in order to win statewide in a state like California, not just once, but 3 times, the vice president has had to put together the kinds of coalitions that are required in this election. What she's done over the last 107 days has been nothing short of remarkable to people from all walks of life who believe in and who are casting their vote for her, know that this is the opportunity to write a new chapter in the American story. And I think we're all excited to be a part of it.
How do you think, Senator, that the vice president, do you think she has successfully painted herself as a change agent in that she can successfully link herself to some of Joe Biden's accomplishments in office, but also she has routinely said her presidency will not resemble a Joe Biden presidency? We know that Trump has essentially been saying, if you were going to do it, why didn't you do it the last 3.5 years? What do you think about her messaging, and what is your response to that criticism?
Yeah, I wonder if President Trump would ask Vice President Pence what policy he actually got passed. I think there was a young high schooler who taught us that civics lessons during the first debate. What I would say, and what the vice president has made very clear, is that she is not Joe Biden. And Donald Trump is not running against Joe Biden. He's running against Kamala Harris, a new generation of leadership in our party and in our country, who has a vision to move us beyond the politics of hate and division, and who is working to unite the people of this country to achieve the greatness that is ahead of us. And so, yes, I am satisfied that the vice president has communicated herself and articulated a vision that is about turning the page and writing the next chapter. And we'll know in a few hours if that was able to resonate with the American people.
Senator, thanks for being with us. You formerly served as president of the Service Employees International Union, which represents about 2 million workers across the country. Do you believe she's done enough, the vice president, to win over those workers?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I have traveled the country on behalf of Vice President Harris, having those very conversations. Because what I want the American people to know is that the vice president didn't just wake up one day and, when President Biden stepped aside, decided that she was going to stand with the working families. I have known her for more than a decade, and every time that she has had the opportunity to stand with workers, union workers, and non-union workers, she has stood with them, whether that is fighting wage and hour claims, taking on employers who are ripping them off, introducing the homeowners Bill of Rights. It has been, I think, her life work to stand with working families. And I'm proud that she has centered those working families and the middle class as a part of her presidency, because these are sets of issues that she is not new to. And I think that union workers all across the country are going to be going into that ballot booth tonight, and have been over the past few weeks of early vote, making their voice heard and standing with someone who doesn't say that they should be fired because they go on strike to exercise their rights to collectively bargain, who doesn't go on Twitter and talk about how their rights just as union workers in this country, how those rights just don't matter. And so I think that the vice president has made her point very clear, and I'm excited about unions like SEIU and others who's been working to help her get elected.
California Senator LaFonza Butler in Washington, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're following breaking news out of Milwaukee.
So let's get straight to Janet Shamlian. Janet, what is the news? What can you tell us?
Vlad and Lindsay, starting on this shot of this tabulation machine, just to give you an idea of what's happening here, they are restarting the count here in Milwaukee. of some 31,000 absentee mail-in ballots and early voting ballots because this machine, I'm sorry, someone's standing there, has just moved in front of the machine. Mark, can you see if you can ask him to move for us, please? These machines have like a little seal on them and the doors weren't completely closed. This morning when the tabulation started, there's going to be some 105,000 or more absentee ballots like that today. More than 30,000 were already counted. Out of an abundance of caution, they are restarting the count as of just a few minutes ago. There are 18 machines like the one that you're looking at in this facility here in the Baird Center in Milwaukee. And so that's going to put them many hours behind. They do believe that now that they may not finish until 5 o'clock tomorrow morning because of the restart. Again, they've zeroed out the machines, meaning that the clock starts at 0 on each of these machines. They're not adding those ballots in a second time, but out of an abundance of caution. And if you can see that little red tape, that's where the door is that was ajar on all of these machines. So there's no wrongdoing at this time, guys, but out of an abundance of caution, it's going to make it a very late night to restart this count of some 30,000 plus absentee and early voting ballots.
Okay, Janet Shamlian, thank you for flagging us and bringing us that breaking news.
I think it's good. What Janet is saying there about an abundance of caution, it makes me feel good about our democracy and about what our election process is like. As Janet says, there is no wrongdoing, but they are just making sure that everyone's vote is counted. I don't know about you. When I went to my polling center, you see people that are just doing their civic duty, helping us to vote. It's kind of a nice feeling. A lot of them are older Americans who feel very passionately about the right to vote. And, you know, there was a little moment when somebody was a first-time voter. They said, first-time voter, and everybody cheered and clapped. It made me really feel good. Yeah. So it's good to see that they're doing the right thing.
And every election expert that I've talked to, at least in this cycle, have said when problems are flagged, that is a symptom of the system working.
Exactly right. Yeah. Perfect saying.
Well, the 2024 election has made history, ranging from shortened timelines to unpredictable speeches. We're going to take a closer look at each campaign's very different strategies and whether that has helped or hurt their bids for the White House.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
It can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7. That is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The
are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Love that camera work outside our Paramount studios in Times Square. Coverage there will begin on CBS News 24/7 at 6:30 and on your local CBS station at 7 p.m. Eastern. Welcome back to our special CBS News election night coverage. I'm here with Vlad Duthier. I'm Lindsay Reiser, and we're very happy that you're here with us. Let's go ahead and bring in our political panel. Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha and Republican strategist Trisha McLaughlin. Thank you both so much for being with us here. I know we have some more exit poll data that we're going to dive into, but Chuck, first I want to ask you out of the gate that Kamala Harris did not really make her identity a focal point of the campaign in terms of her race, in terms of her gender. Do you think that that was a mistake that she didn't lean into it more instead of sort of just addressing it when asked in interviews, or do you think it was a good strategy?
It's a debate that's out there. You could see plus and minuses as a strategist on both sides. I think she did the right thing by not leaning into that too much, because you can obviously tell she's a woman and obviously tell she's a woman of color. She did tell her story about growing up in a middle-class household. People almost made fun of it. She talked about it so much.
People did on SNL.
People did almost, they did make fun of it.
But let me clear the air. As a strategist, you want people to make fun of it because that's the thing you have to drive home, because I'm sure we're going to talk about, has she distinguished herself in what she's going to do and what's different? She only had 100 days to distinguish herself when Donald Trump's been running for president now for like 47 years.
So, Trisha, let me ask you, both the Trump and the Harris campaigns frequently attacked each other throughout this campaign cycle, but the former president was particularly tough on the vice president, using sometimes vulgar language. He questioned her racial identity. When you hear what you saw over the course of the last 6 months, do you think voters are thinking about that as they go to the polls?
Yeah, I think definitely on both sides. I think the Americans don't want us to be so divided at this point. I mean, I know, the sitting president, Biden, he might have waffled a little in his words, but he did call half of Americans garbage. Tim Walz repeatedly said that Republicans who attend Trump rallies compared them to Nazis. So I don't think Americans want this kind of rhetoric. I think Donald Trump, when he's at his best, he's talking about policy solutions, whether that be immigration reform, really strengthening our border. We know the immigration crisis that's going on. When we talk about the economy, getting inflation under control, when we talk about, peace in the Middle East, peace in Ukraine, that's when Donald Trump's on his best. And I was glad to see that in his closing argument yesterday.
So, Trisha, one of the things that has been interesting, when we talk to folks on the ground, they say, look, they don't like the language. They think that Donald Trump is rude. They think he's crude. They might not even want him to babysit their children, but they like what his message is on the economy. They like his message on results. His results is what one voter told Argyle King this morning. So you're saying that for a lot of the voters that you're polling, that the language doesn't matter. A mean tweet doesn't matter.
It's not that it doesn't matter, but I think this election is about priorities. I think because of where we are with the economy, the fact that inflation is double what it was 4 years ago, the fact that prices are up 20%, that we are dealing with an immigration crisis, I think that's what matters, is that what Americans are feeling has not been positive for the past 4 years, versus they can compare Donald Trump's rhetoric from 2017 to 2019 and say, hey, I actually like my time under Donald Trump better.
Chuck, I want to ask you about this because we're getting some data from exit polls, and we know that the numbers can change, so we want to preface with that. But 46% of voters only have a favorable opinion of Harris, 42% of Trump, 7% of neither, 1% of both. What does that tell you about today's politics?
It backs up what we've been seeing nationwide. I'm working on races from New York to California. I'm one of those old consultants who are still working on races as of today on congressional and Senate levels. So we've been doing a lot of focus groups and a lot of polling. Donald Trump, let me connect this to what you just asked about the way he's been acting. Most folks don't like the way the country's going because they've never felt the recovery, or they're still worried that things are too high, just like Trisha said. Donald Trump should be winning this thing by 60 or 70% if 3/4 of America says the country's going in the wrong direction. And the only reason he's not, take it from a political pro, is because there's a portion of America who don't like that. They think he's mean, they don't like the way he acts, they don't think he's presidential. Some of them will still vote for him because they want gas to be whatever it was back then. If he was more likable and could stay on message, this thing would have been over yesterday.
So another exit poll that we want to show here to our viewers has to do with the question of which candidate has views that are too extreme for mainstream Americans. Donald Trump, 46% of those polled say Trump's views are too extreme, compared to 37% of Kamala Harris. 8% say both. What does that tell you?
I think it goes back to the likability, because I think Trish has something in common. There's a lot more of us. Most of America is in the middle of wanting some kind of results. And so I think that that's the biggest thing, is like, this is a likability.
Trisha, final thoughts?
You know, I think tonight's going to be very interesting with the gender gap. We're hearing a lot that's a silver lining for Democrats, really. Right now, though, in the early vote, we're not seeing that American women are really getting out in these early states as they were in 2020. Yes, is COVID a factor? Maybe. But I also think that we'll see. We'll see if the polls are being quiet for Republican women, because I think that there might be a shy Trump voter in the women.
Interesting. All right, Chuck Rocha and Trisha McLaughlin, thank you both so much.
Thanks
we
so
really
much,
appreciate your help. All right, one more time from Allie. Are we going to Finn? All right, let's go to Finn. CBS News political director Finn Gomez hanging out in Times Square. Finn, good to see you. What are you watching for as we're getting some of this data coming back? What are your thoughts right now?
You know, I've been talking to both campaigns today about just in terms of turnout of like what they're seeing, what they're expecting, and how they basically how they're feeling about the turnout. You know, the Harris campaign has told me that in Philadelphia specifically, like that critical city, of course, in the key crucial state, battleground state of Pennsylvania, that they're seeing a high Puerto Rican voter turnout. You know, I spoke to Malcolm Kenyatta, who's a state representative there, and also on the Harris campaign's advisory committee there in Pennsylvania, who says that they're seeing this very big turnout amongst that specific group, and also just overall in Philadelphia. This is according to him. And also, I did speak to someone close to the Trump campaign who tells me that they feel very good about Arizona right now. It's earlier, obviously, in Arizona, the time difference, but they're looking not only just at the early voting that occurred, but also that they felt that they made some inroads with Latinos, especially with Latino males. Of course, it's early. There's a long way to go here, Lindsay and Vlad, but it's going to be a tight race.
Finn Gomez, thanks.
All right, CBS News has spent the past year talking to voters across the country and specifically across the political spectrum. So for more on what we found as we prepare for election results, we're going to share that with you. You're watching America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Todd.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back. Looks like some busy streets there in Times Square, along with some of our favorite yellow cabs. We love to see it. For months, our Major Garrett has been meeting with voters across the country for our Eye on America series. That includes North Carolina, where people of vastly different political views came together for a river rafting experiment in unity. The organizer of the event explained why it's so important.
What is the essence of this experiment?
Bringing people together with different points of view has become difficult, and what we're finding is that
From Ken Powley. He watched January 6th and decided to do something about it. He'd been a rafting instructor most of his professional life, but he decided to put people from different political perspectives in the same boat, metaphorically and literally saying, in America, though we differ on politics, we're all in the same boat. And that's not going to solve all of America's problems. He knows that. I knew it when I did that story. But let's just bring out the aperture a little bit. We did that on the Nantahala River in western North Carolina. A couple of months later, absolutely devastated by Hurricane Helene. What has happened there since? Republicans and Democrats, storm-tossed both, have come together to try to rebuild their communities and, most importantly, Lindsay, prepare each other to participate in this election. All in western North Carolina, ravaged by Hurricane Helene. They stood up voting precincts. They changed, adapted methods for people to participate either early in person or through mail balloting. They solved a huge problem on a bipartisan way under very difficult circumstances. That was sort of what people were talking about in those rafts. That little thing I discovered on the Nantahala River actually played itself out in western North Carolina a couple of months later.
Major Garrett, thank you for giving us that storytelling. Appreciate it. Polls are closing in several states, including Georgia.
And while voting continues across the country, we're going to have much more on what we're hearing from that exit polling data. Plus, we have reporters stationed at both presidential candidates' election night headquarters. We're going to hear how they are feeling as our special America Decides election night coverage continues right here on CBS.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Just get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go down.
Yeah, boy!
November 5th will be the most important day in the history of our country.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election.
Both leading candidates right now will be in their 80s.
For months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Then
with COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with if we finally beat Medicare.
There are at least some House Democrats who were gathered tonight watching this together, talking to the White House about having him step down.
Look what happened.
Shots have rung out at a rally where President Trump was addressing the crowd.
They have extended the security perimeter around the Republican National Convention, which is set to get underway tomorrow.
And that iconic photo of him coming up, all we have to do is show that.
President Joe Biden has decided to drop out of the 2024 race.
I decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Kamala Harris. What's up, good to be?
I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country.
It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page.
Both candidates presenting vastly different closing arguments.
We're running out of ways to say close, tight, even, right? Either candidate can win.
We're going to unleash a golden age of prosperity.
These guys are creepy and, yes, just weird as hell. And we will make America great again.
And when we fight, we win!
CBS News, America Decides, Election 2024.
We made it. November 5th is finally here. Welcome to our America Decides Election Night special. I'm Lindsay Reiser in New York.
And I'm Vladimir Dutsiak. The first polls will close in just 1 hour from now, 7 p.m. Eastern. That includes the battleground state of Georgia.
Exit polling data continues to come in from voters across the country. The most important issue nationally is the economy. The second most important is the state of democracy. And of course, this was a completely different race just 5 months ago, with Vice President Kamala Harris a candidate for only 107 days. In that same time span, former President Donald Trump survived 2 assassination attempts.
Our CBS News reporters and correspondents are here all evening long with us to bring you the results, the analysis, and the reporting from every critical state and races down the ballot.
We begin tonight at the campaign headquarters with CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes at Harris campaign headquarters at Howard University in Washington. And CBS Mornings co-host Tony DeCopel is at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. We're going to kick things off with Nancy. Nancy, what are you seeing?
Good evening. I'm in the quad at Howard University in downtown D.C., which tonight is going to be serving as the watch party location for Kamala Harris, who, of course, attended Howard University, feels very strongly about her alma mater. When will she come out and speak? We don't know. It all depends on the returns, I'm told, by top aides. Also depends on what Donald Trump does tonight. Does he preemptively declare victory before all the votes are in or before all the votes are counted? What do they do then? I'm told that they are prepared for a number of eventualities. She has stayed largely out of sight today. She did a slew of drive-time radio interviews this morning across the battleground states. Other than that, I'm told that she has been spending time with family. That's a tradition for her to have dinner with her family members on election nights. She also made a quick visit to Democratic Party headquarters here in D.C. to thank the staffers, thank the volunteers there who have been behind her during this 108-day sprint to the finish line after she became the nominee by surprise after President Biden dropped out under pressure from his party. She also did a little bit of phone banking at Democratic headquarters, surprising a couple of voters in battleground states who picked up the phone to hear the vice president on the other end. Back to you guys.
I'm sure it was an incredibly surreal moment. Nancy Cordes, thank you very much. Let's now go to Tony DeCopel, who's joining us from Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. Tony, my brother, you look rested for the very long night ahead. What's the mood like right now at Trump HQ?
Hey, Vlad, good evening. Well, they just cut the music and put the cable news shows back on. The feeling until that moment changed was kind of like a wedding reception here. The convention center is giant. It's beginning to fill up. The greatest hits are playing from your uncle's best wedding, maybe the second time around. There are about a dozen cash bars that are setting up, preparing to open. And there's a feeling of reunion, maybe a feeling of goodbye among the invited Trump guests. It's all invite only here, and many of them have already begun to gather at the foot of the podium there where they expect Donald Trump to speak later tonight in front of, and we counted, 43 American flags. Gone are the days when 1 or 2 would be enough. One way or another, as one supporter told me, this is a night that they anticipate will end in tears. They're hoping for victory, though, obviously, and just a short time ago, we talked to a senior Trump aide who said they like where they sit, they like their shoes. They are bullish on North Carolina, they are bullish on the senior vote, and they feel like the gender gap is more about Kamala Harris collapsing among men than Donald Trump collapsing among women. Of course, as Nancy touched on, one of the questions is whether we're going to have a rerun here of 2020, where Donald Trump comes out after talking as though victory were going to be inevitable and then accusing the American public and the 10,000 jurisdictions that run elections of a giant fraud, claiming victory while votes were still being counted. If that were to happen, all bets are off. But like I said at the top, and as a supporter put it to me, the one thing that's certain is, in this room tonight, there will be tears by the end of the evening.
Tony DeCopel, thank you so much. We have reporters on the ground covering election night all across the U.S., including the so-called blue wall states. So let's go to Pennsylvania and Michigan.
I'm Weijia Zhang in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the biggest city in the biggest battleground state where voters say they understand the assignment. They feel excited, they feel anxious, and anecdotally, election officials say it appears that they are ready to go because there's been a steady stream of voters here all day long, and it looks like the turnout will be high, which is, of course, is what both campaigns are really banking on. For the Harris campaign, they really need turnout in cities like Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania that typically overwhelmingly vote blue. And for Trump, he needs to have the rural area voters come out, especially because he has been targeting low propensity voters, those that don't usually vote, that don't usually engage in elections, to come out possibly for the first time for him this time around. And so it could all come down to this state that offers 19 electoral college votes. And while both teams, both sides say they could still win without Pennsylvania, it would be certainly much more difficult if they lose.
I'm Jerika Duncan here in Detroit, Michigan. We've been speaking with voters all day, many of them describing the feeling of relief and excitement to finally be able to cast their ballot today. Here in Detroit, African Americans make up about 80% of the population. And while Harris is projected to win, she still has a number of other cities and counties to consider. Trump hoping to make gains on black voters as well as union workers. Another voting bloc that is worth paying attention to is what happens with Arab American voters. Many of them have expressed that they are not happy with how the Biden-Harris administration has handled the war in Gaza. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, tells me that based on the number of people who voted before these polls even opened, they are on track possibly to have a record-setting voter turnout this year.
All right, Weijia Jiang and Jerika Duncan, thank you both.
We're following breaking news out of Milwaukee.
Janet Shamlian is there. Janet, what are you hearing? What can you tell us?
Vlad and Lindsay, the city of Milwaukee has just restarted and announced a recount of more than 30,000 absentee ballots. It's happening as we speak over my shoulder. This is because 18 tabulation machines here in Central Count weren't properly sealed. They say there is no evidence that there was any damage to the ballots or the vote was at risk. And in fact, the machines were zeroed out under the observance of election observers here. But it is going to delay the results here in Milwaukee by several hours. They were originally saying 2 a.m., now perhaps as late or as early as 5 a.m. before we have a count here, at least in the Milwaukee area.
All right, Janet Shamlian, thank you for keeping us updated. We appreciate it. And when we come back, Vlad, we're going to be breaking down new exit polling data. More on who's voting and what they care about most. That's on the way. Stay with us. You're streaming CBS News.
Get all the CBS News election information at your fingertips, including full access to interactive election maps, push alerts on major races, plus breaking news and 24/7 streaming coverage. Get the free CBS News app now.
Come on, Julia.
Oh, no.
I will if you will.
You go, gal.
That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write you. 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour. This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News Original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We're taking a live look right now in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Of course, one of the crucial 7 battleground states we will be monitoring all night long at a polling place there, as it looks like votes are being tabulated there by poll workers. Welcome back to our America Decides Election Night special coverage live from New York. We have analyzed polling all year, and today we finally hear directly from the voters. So Vlad is looking at exit polling, a sampling of what actual voters are feeling. Vlad, what are we finding out?
All right, Lindsay, we're going to look specifically at the issue of abortion. Check it out. Harris voters. This has become the most important issue for those voters who say that they are supporters of Vice President Harris. Take a look at this. 56% of Harris voters say that they are concerned about the state of democracy, followed up very closely by 21% who say abortion is close top of mind. So for Democrats and seemingly these Harris voters, the economy, can you believe it? It comes in at only 13%. Obviously, foreign policy not even registering with just 3%. And this, to me, is incredibly surprising. Only 2% of those Harris supporters say immigration is top of mind. So, state of democracy, abortion. Let's take a look here. They say abortion should be, this is a national poll now, 33% say legal in all cases, 33% say legal in most cases, 25% say illegal in most cases, 6%, only 6% says illegal in all cases. Not very surprising here when it comes to how Democrats think about the issue of abortion. Among women, abortion should be 69% of those polled, Lindsay, say it should be legal. Only 27% say it should be illegal. So, of course, as we've been talking about, this is the first national election since the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And so you see that's a very, very big number. All right, Harris voters, abortion should be legal in all cases. 34% say legal in most cases. This is really, really telling. 58% legal in all cases, 34% legal in most cases. One more slide here. Now, we're looking at Trump voters. Abortion should be legal in all cases. Only 6% say legal in all cases. But this is kind of surprising. 32% say legal in most cases. 47% say illegal in most cases. So under 50% when it comes to those Trump supporters. Again, this is the first national election since the overturning of Roe versus Wade. These numbers are incredibly telling. Back to you, Lindsay.
Very interesting. All right, Vlad, thank you. And our CBS News correspondents across the country are covering battleground states in this historic election. Let's go ahead and check in on North Carolina and Georgia.
I'm Skylar Henry in Raleigh, North Carolina, where voters here recognize that it will be a razor-thin race for president in this battleground purple state. We spoke to the North Carolina Board of Elections that says that as of 10 o'clock this morning, they anticipate that voter turnout will either meet or exceed what we saw in 2020, where 75% of registered voters came out to the polls. Both the Harris and Trump campaigns say that they are confident. The Trump campaign saying that they are pleased with the GOP early vote turnout up until this point. Harris campaign says that they are pleased with the numbers that they have seen in the urban areas and also feel as if they've made several inroads in the suburbs. We'll see what happens when polls close tonight at 7:30.
I'm Nicole Killian in Atlanta, where there is a mix of excitement and cautious anticipation as we await the results here at a GOP watch party where state Republicans hope former President Trump flips the state, although Democrats are also confident in their ground game. turnout at the polls has been relatively steady, but there have been a number of issues today, including a series of bomb threats in Fulton and Gwinnett counties, which are part of the Atlanta metro and some of the largest counties in the state. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger told reporters that some of these threats appear to be from Russia and were deemed not credible. Some polling locations in Georgia are extending their hours due to the disruption and other delays. Ahead of Election Day, a record 4 million people had already voted, and many voters we spoke to believe this could come down to the wire. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump made nearly a dozen visits to the Peach State, which has turned into a fierce battleground with 16 electoral votes up for grabs.
Our thanks to Skylar Henry in North Carolina and Nicole Killian in Georgia. So the number to watch for, 270. Of course, that is the number needed to win the majority of electoral college votes and become the next president of the United States. Now, both the Harris and Trump campaigns have their own strategies to reach that number and see their own paths to success. CBS News' Maurice Dubois has more.
Okay, Lindsay, we are here at the Paths to Victory tabletop, and this is the map that's going to show how the night shapes up. This is set up to show you the expectations for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's expected, based on our data team, our past history, voting patterns, what we've seen over the years, this is where the election is going to start, with the red states going to Donald Trump and the blue states going to Kamala Harris. And that results in a starting point of 226 electoral votes for Kamala Harris expected and 219 for Donald Trump. That's what the data shows. That's what historical voting patterns show. That's where we will begin. And what that does is that leaves 7 battleground states up for grabs. So 93 electoral votes up for grabs for the candidates. And here's what they're looking at. Let's say we're Donald Trump. The Trump team is hoping desperately to flip Georgia. This would be their easiest path to victory. Remember, Joe Biden took it by 12,000 votes or less. And then to hold on to North Carolina. Trump won North Carolina last time around, and he would like to hold on to that. And then if they can get Pennsylvania, Donald Trump becomes the next president of the United States, right on the nose, getting 270 electoral votes. Now, if that's not available to Trump, let's say he doesn't get Pennsylvania, but he's able to flip Georgia and hold on to North Carolina, he's going to be looking out west. He's going to start in Arizona for 11 electoral votes and Nevada for its 6 electoral votes. And then he's still 2 votes short, 2 electoral votes short. So that means any of these states here, let's say he doesn't get Pennsylvania, but that means he has to go to Wisconsin or Michigan, and either state will put him over the top as the next president of the United States. For Kamala Harris, the paths slightly different. The expectations or the hope for Democrats is that they duplicate what Joe Biden did back in 2020. If she is able to hold on to Pennsylvania and get the 19 electoral votes there, and Michigan, their 15 electoral votes, and Wisconsin, their 10, that brings her to 270 right on the nose. Now, if that doesn't work, how'd you like to be in the war room for either of these candidates on election night, right? If that doesn't work, Kamala Harris does have the southern belt available to her. If she's able to hold on to Georgia, to flip North Carolina, and to grab Arizona and Nevada as well, that brings her to 275. She becomes president of the United States. So you see a couple of very distinctive paths. The road is not easy. It's long and difficult. It's been a long campaign, but it's going to end soon. And that's where we're going to show you how this shakes out on election night. So that's the story here from the Paths to Victory tabletop. We'll see you on election night, Vlad.
All right, Maurice Dubois for us. So you can see there are a couple of paths for both candidates to 270.
Helps my visual brain to see.
It really does. Very cool board, that. So how does either party analyze all this information? We're going to ask our strategist who will join us at the table. That's coming up. Stick around.
So I'm just over today. I'm over this whole election, like I'm sure the rest of America is. And that's really it, just for it to be over with. There's not anything I'm anxious about. I mean, it's just, it is what it is.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
but now through conservation efforts at Yellowstone.
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
A herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Studio 57. You're looking at a live shot from Fort Bend County in the great state of Texas. We are here in our New York City studio, Studio 57, at the CBS News Broadcast Center for our America Decides Election Night Special. First polls, Lindsay, are going to close in just about 30 minutes. Woo. That includes a number of states, including the battleground state of Georgia, a state that President Biden carried by just over 11,000 votes back in 2020.
Let's bring in our political panel, Chuck Rocha and Matt Gorman. Chuck is a Democratic strategist who formerly served as a senior advisor for Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns. Matt is a Republican strategist who served as a senior communications advisor for Senator Tim Scott's presidential campaign. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. Of course. All right, so I don't know if you guys were watching Maurice Dubois at that very cool board where he sort of showed the 2 different paths for both candidates, 270. If you go by what Maurice showed, which is that if Vice President Harris is able to carry the state of Pennsylvania, and she's able to either flip North Carolina or Georgia to blue, then, and she keeps that blue wall in the Midwest, that path to 270 is relatively easy. Same for Trump. If he picks up North Carolina, picks up Georgia, keeps Pennsylvania, he's at 270. How do you guys see it happening?
These things aren't in a vacuum, right? If you win Pennsylvania, for instance, you're suddenly not going to just lose another random state that you expect to win, right?
So what you mean by that is that if you win Pennsylvania, are you saying then that you're going to win those other states in the Midwest?
You have a better chance than not, right? Because a lot of this stuff doesn't move in isolation. A lot of things move, as we're seeing with these exit polls, in concert, right? So, for example, if Kamala Harris was to win North Carolina and or Georgia, she should be the strong favorite in Pennsylvania, and vice versa for Trump a little bit, too. So that's the way I'm looking at it. But more than anything else, Pennsylvania gives you optionality as you go to the next round.
And you're not going to know right away. You're going to know North Carolina tonight, probably. You're probably going to know Georgia tonight. You're probably not going to know Pennsylvania if it's close for a couple of days, just because of how, for everybody at home, everybody counts their votes a little bit different. Some of them are opening their ballots now. In Florida, they've been opening ballots for a week and a half. Like, every state's a little different. But Matt makes a great point. If you see that inertia, and it's better to win than not, because if you win that, it don't mean that she's going to, if she wins Pennsylvania, doesn't mean that Donald Trump's going to win Michigan by 5. He could, but it probably means she does pretty good in Michigan and Wisconsin. Well, vice versa, though, to give credit. Same with Trump.
So, Matt, earlier I had asked Representative Byron Donalds about the exit polls and what he was going to be watching for, and he said he was specifically going to be looking at urban voter turnout. Can you explain why, and is that also something that you're looking at?
Sure. I think urban voter turnout, specifically for African-American men, every year for elections, maybe do every 1 of 4 or 2 of 4. But here's the thing. I think I tend to take exit polls with a grain of salt. I think they're better in a historical context when we're looking at issues. But for nights like tonight, it's easy to latch onto when there's not a lot of news going on. But it's hard, I think, to really get a sense of where this is fully going with just exit polls.
Let me give you 3 congressional seats to watch tonight as the polls close that are on Eastern Standard Time. They have nothing to do with the presidential. That'll tell you a lot. First is the Northern District of Maine, which is Maine 2. It's everything north of Portland. All of that up there. And it's represented by a Democrat, Trump district. Let me take you to Pennsylvania 8, another Democrat, Trump district, and take you to Ohio 9, another Democratic congressional seat. All 3 of these are congressional seats that Trump won that are represented by a Democrat. If a Democrat loses in any of those 3, it could be a good night for Donald Trump.
Before we wrap this up, let me get a bird's eye view about the state of elections in the United States. A buddy of mine texted me something that I thought was kind of amusing, where he said, look, over the last 20 years, we get the results. You know, we're all fairly of a certain age. We remember getting the results by 11, 12, or 1 a.m. In most years. Since COVID, we've seen this dragging out, and that has sown some of that distrust in our elections process. Is it frustrating for you with your clients? Let me just get your talk.
No, I mean, look to what Florida did. You mentioned Florida earlier. I used to work for Jeb Bush. After the mess in 2000, they reformed the laws, and 95% of the vote in 2022 was counted by 9:30 Eastern time in Florida. And that's with early voting, it's access. You can count it quick and count it securely and efficiently without it taking days and if not weeks in some states.
It's the same. Like, you should be able to do this quickly, and they prove in Florida that you can do this quickly. But not everybody at home understands early vote, when they open, when they don't open. And then when you have candidates up there saying that there could be things going on, it makes people, because they just don't have every day to listen.
Right.
Love that.
Chuck Rocha and Matt Gorman, thank you both so much. That does it for our America Decides Election Night special. I'm Lindsay Reiser.
I'm Vladimir G-Tech. Coming up next, the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
The most important election. Like, we all have to go out there and vote.
Tonight, one of the most consequential elections in American history, and the first polls are about to close.
I am excited, very thrilled that it's over.
It'll be nice to finally put this behind us and move forward as a country.
We're monitoring election security across the country as we settle in for a long night of results.
It looks like we have a very substantial lead.
Votes out here. Gotta talk to voters.
Could turnout be historic? We're in the battleground states. What brought voters to the polls?
The abortion access is a big deal. Definitely the economy.
A special edition of the CBS Evening News, live from our election headquarters, starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us as America Decides on this election night 2024. Right now, we're kicking off what will be a long night of extensive coverage and analysis here at our election headquarters in New York City's Times Square. The first polls are closing in 30 minutes from now as Americans cast their ballots for who will be the next president of the United States. Vice President Kamala Harris is spending election night at her alma mater, Howard University in Washington, D.C. Former President Donald Trump is at his Palm Beach, Florida resort, Mar-a-Lago. We could see record turnout with long lines from coast to coast today. Secretaries of State in those battlegrounds of Michigan and Georgia saying tonight they expect that their states will have their highest turnout ever. And so far, the process is mostly going smoothly with a few isolated problems, as is normal, including long lines and some technical glitches. There have also been bogus bomb threats at polling places in several battleground states, which the FBI says appear to have come from foreign actors. We have correspondents positioned in all the battleground states and here at our headquarters to bring you up-to-the-minute information and insights, including details from those first exit polls that came out just a short time ago. CBS's Nancy Cordes is going to lead us off with the Harris campaign in Washington, D.C. Good evening, Nancy.
Good evening, Nora. We are at Howard University tonight, which is the vice president's alma mater, and will be serving as election night headquarters. The vice president has been enjoying dinner with extended family. She's also been doing some speech prep, and I'm told that the mood among top officials on the campaign at this hour is good. It's calm, even as the rest of the nation nervously awaits the results.
Vice President Harris made one final campaign stop today to Democratic headquarters in D.C. to do some last-minute phone banking.
Hi, Carolyn. It's Kamala. Hi.
And to thank the staffers behind her bid. Last night, she held one last rally in Philadelphia.
We finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy.
She made this closing pitch to a crowd of 30,000.
I've spent my life fighting for people who have been hurt and counted out, but who never stop believing that in our country, anything is possible.
Today, it's her supporters taking center stage at polling places across the country.
I voted for Kamala Harris. I think she's the right choice to continue our democracy.
She is more for the people.
I think the other guy's insane a little bit, and he makes me fearful.
It has been just 108 days since the VP took the reins of this campaign after President Biden, facing pressure from his party, dropped out. Since then, she has visited the 7 battleground states 51 times in a truncated bid to catch up to Trump in the polls.
I think she fits more what I'm looking for into a leader.
She would make history if she wins. She would make history for the world.
Harris herself hasn't talked much about the historic potential of her bid.
Honestly, I've just been so focused on the task in front of me.
But she did nod to it this morning in an interview with a black radio station in Atlanta.
To go back tonight to Howard University, my beloved alma mater, and be able to hopefully, recognize this day for what it is really, it's full circle for me.
Harris added in that interview that the first office she ever ran for was freshman class representative here at Howard University, and she won. 42 years later, she is waiting to see if she will be the one to crack that highest, hardest glass ceiling. Nora?
And Nancy, let me ask you about those exit polls that just came out. They show that roughly 7 in 10 voters are dissatisfied or angry about the way things are going. That usually hurts the incumbent party. In this case, that's the Biden-Harris administration. So what is the one data point tonight that the Harris campaign is pointing to that makes them optimistic?
Well, Nora, they're very excited about the enthusiasm that they're seeing on college campuses today. They point to Lehigh University, for example, in battleground Pennsylvania, where the lines to vote were 4 and 5 hours long. Campaign surrogates actually had to go to Lehigh to encourage those students to stay in line, and young people tend to vote Democratic.
Nancy Cordes at Howard University. Thank you, Nancy. Let's turn now to Florida, where Donald Trump will watch results come in. He returned to the Sunshine State in the early hours of the morning after campaigning in 3 battleground states yesterday. CBS's Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now from West Palm Beach. And good evening, Caitlin. What are they saying?
Good evening, Nora. Well, Trump is here tonight in Florida for his 3rd and final election as the Republican Party nominee. He spent part of the day holding tele-rallies across the battleground states, trying to get every last voter out to the polls. And he told reporters earlier today he has no regrets about how he ran his campaign.
Joined by wife Melania, former President Donald Trump made his
final campaign stop, swinging by his campaign headquarters to thank his staff.
We just wanted to come over and pay our respects.
He then continued to raise unfounded concerns about the integrity of the election, railing against voting machines, despite the fact that over 95% of all votes will be cast on paper ballots.
You use a computer because it calculates quickly, and you use paper because you save cost. But the paper turns out to be much quicker than the computer. There's something wrong with that, so we don't like that.
Earlier in the day, after he voted in Palm Beach, he told reporters the process had been fair so far.
If I lose an election, if it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it.
But CBS News has learned that Trump loyalist Steve Bannon, released from prison just a week ago, is standing up a war room in Washington to help, quote, secure a victory for Trump. Trump, whose supporters stormed the Capitol after he lost the last election, said he was unconcerned about violence this time around.
Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people.
His supporters have witnessed a tumultuous Trump year, from a criminal trial to assassination attempts to a litany of false and sometimes offensive statements.
They're eating the dogs.
And crude insults of his opponents that rile up his base. That continued up to the very last rally last night, in this case against Nancy Pelosi.
She's an evil, sick, crazy bitch. Oh, no. It starts with a B, but I won't say it.
And Trump will await election results tonight at his Mar-a-Lago resort with family and friends, including Elon Musk. He also says he doesn't have a speech prepared tonight, saying that he knows what he'll say if he wins, and he doesn't want to think about losing. Nora?
It was remarkable to see that rally, shouting the B word at his final political rally. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you. We have reporters spread out across the battleground states tonight, including in Georgia, where the first polls close at the top of the hour. CBS's Nicole Killian is in Atlanta tonight, and Nicole, voting in the area, I understand, was disrupted by several non-credible bomb threats for just a very short time. What are we learning?
Yeah, that's right, Nora. Well, as polls get ready to close here in Georgia, there is a mix of excitement and cautious anticipation as we await the results. We're at a GOP watch party where state Republicans hope the former president flips the state.
The road to the White House runs through Georgia, and winning Georgia makes it very likely that he'll be the next president of the United States.
Even though turnout at the polls has been steady, there have been several issues today, including a series of bomb threats in various metro Atlanta counties. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger told reporters these threats appear to be from Russia and were not deemed credible. Some polling locations are extending their hours due to the disruption and other delays. More than 1 million people are expected to cast votes today. That's in addition to a record 4 million who early voted. I spoke with one woman who lives abroad and flew all the way back home to Georgia to cast her ballot in person for Vice President Kamala Harris.
She looks like me. I'm a black woman. I have 4 children, so that's kind of important to me.
I know for a fact that Kamala is going for reproductive rights, and I have a lot of women in my life that are very important to me, so I just wanted to support them and make sure I got that vote out there.
Both Harris and Trump have made at least half a dozen visits to the Peach State, which has turned into a fierce battleground with 16 electoral votes up for grabs. Nora?
So many voters turning out today. Nicole Killian, thank you. Let's head now to CBS's Weijia Jiang. She's at a polling location in Philadelphia. All right, Weijia, we know Philadelphia is the big electoral prize tonight with 19 electoral votes. What are you hearing from officials there?
Well, Nora, it's great to be with you. Voters tell us they understood the assignment in this critical battleground state, and officials tell us that turnout has been high statewide, including right here in Philadelphia. Now, the Harris campaign needs big wins in Philly and Pittsburgh, which is why even today volunteers knocked on over 100,000 doors before 11 a.m. alone across the state. And the campaign claims they are seeing a high concentration of Puerto Rican registered voters in Philly after a comedian made a vile joke at a Trump rally last month. Tonight, the Trump campaign tells us they are tracking a robust turnout in rural areas where they have been courting low propensity voters, especially men who usually do not go to the polls. Voters across the state say they are feeling the pressure along with excitement.
I have immense anxiety about it. I actually lost sleep about it last night.
I mean, it's going to be a tight race, just like 2020 was, 2016. So, you know, we do what we can. We go out and vote.
According to a CBS News analysis here in Pennsylvania, Harris has banked a lead with mail-in ballots up by roughly 500,000 votes. Nora?
Weijia Jiang in Philadelphia for us tonight. Thank you. Let's turn now to battleground Michigan, where the Secretary of State says the turnout there is off the charts and that they might have the results by midnight. CBS's Jerika Duncan is talking to voters in Detroit. Good evening, Jerika.
Good evening to you, Nora. Good evening to everyone at home. The voters that we spoke to said that they were excited and relieved that they were able to finally cast their ballot today. In fact, I met a woman here, 41-year-old Jessica Jackson, at this polling location here in Detroit. She said that she was torn between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Ultimately, she cast her ballot for a third-party candidate. Take a listen.
I just had too many questions for, you know, still regarding Republican, Democrat, and I always vote straight Democrat ticket, but I was so confused, I just went with the non-affiliation, Cornel West.
In the Motor City, where 80% of the population here is made up of African Americans, Harris is projected to win this area. However, Trump is hoping to make gains with black voters and union workers as well. This afternoon, I spoke to the UAW President Shawn Fain, who said Biden-Harris policies have actually helped union workers. You say Trump's policies aren't working for the labor class, the working class, but he's resonating with them. How do you explain that?
You know, look, Trump is a very good salesman. I say he's a con artist. I believe a lot of what Trump says resonates with people because he tells them what they want to hear.
We reached out to a spokesperson from the Trump campaign to ask them how they're feeling about Michigan, and they simply said, quote, "We feel great." And Nora, to your point, the Secretary of State told me today that based on the number of voters who cast their ballot before the polls even opened today, she expects that Michigan is on pace to break a record when it comes to voter turnout. Nora?
Wow, what an exciting day it has been and will be tonight. Jerika Duncan, thank you. Let's bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett, to get some analysis of a big night. All right, Major, so excited to talk to you because you have such great sources in both parties. But let's start first with what states we're going to look to first tonight to get some sense of how is this going to go?
We're all in this together, Nora. What do I mean by that? What we're curious about here, the campaigns are curious about, the voters are curious about. Georgia and North Carolina. Why? Because they close early and they count quickly. Why is this collection of two states so important to the Trump campaign, Nora? 8 visits by the former president in the last week of this campaign to Georgia and North Carolina combined.
They're must-wins for him.
They are, well, they are very high priority items for the Trump campaign, for sure. And then let's go up to Michigan. We talked about this a little bit last night. Of the 3 blue wall states, so-called, Michigan will report votes earlier than Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Maybe not dramatically earlier, but we get a key sense of the evening there. 5 visits by Kamala Harris to Michigan in the closing week of the campaign, a huge priority for that campaign. So Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan will begin to tell us the tale of the evening.
Is there anything in these exit polls that give us a sense about how this night may shape up?
Again, these are preliminary exit polls. We want to be careful not to overcharacterize them, but we do have some areas of emphasis for the 2 candidates and their supporters. Let's go first to Harris voters. Most important issue for Harris voters: democracy and the preservation thereof, 58%. Abortion and abortion rights, reproductive health care generally, 22%. Economy, 12%.